not admitted without parents or guardian.
Bears don't eat people. This one did.
Open jaws, the forest screams, shadow moves in violent dreams, flesh and fang, the beast awakes, trees shatter, the earth it quakes, eyes of ruin, a crimson stare, majesty becomes despair, claws like swords, they shred, they tear, havoc born of the grizzly's lair. Run, pray through the haze, trapped inside the bear's wild maze. No mercy, no place to hide, rampage in the dark light. Branches snap where bloodlines spill, silent woods subdued by will, nature bends in death's cruel hand, chaos reigns across the land. Thunder steps, the beast does mock, flesh and fury, time has stopped, echoes howl, the night grows deep, the wild will never bow, never sleep. Run, pray through the haze, trapped inside the bear's wild maze. No mercy, no place to hide, rampage in the dark light.
It could happen for real. Good evening, fans of fantastic films. Welcome to the Drive-In Asylum double feature. Second night in a row. Crazy. We're just giving it and giving it and giving it this weekend. And we're really excited. We got a guest host tonight, Jack Perez, filmmaker, producer, writer. You'd be hard-pressed to find something he didn't do. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor. I've been waiting to join. I've been watching, so it's super cool. You guys are doing some heavy lifting in terms of, like, you guys are almost like a daily, a daily talk show where you're cranking. It's impressive. And that piece was great. I mean, that was fantastic. It's weird because you never expect to see that imagery, particularly for those of us, and I saw a lot of the comments that saw this film when we were kids, to suddenly see these images sort of smashed up against that particular piece of music, it creates this whole other sort of weird psychedelic impression. So yeah,
The love theme from Grizzly. That was
yeah, totally.
yeah,
No, it works.
yeah,
It was great.
yeah.
It's great.
I like when movies do have a love theme, like Orca kind of has one sometimes. And
That's creepy. Yeah, the
Yeah.
love theme in Orca is creepy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it adds an extra something. Yeah, you
Yeah.
kind of expect a love theme in a disaster movie.
Yeah.
But in an Irwin Allen movie, but when you get it in Orca, it kind
Yeah,
of,
Orca is probably the movie I was most fired up as a kid because it was on every Marvel comic for like 6 months.
right.
That
Yeah.
And I was like, well, when Orca comes out, and then finally, I was like 6. Nobody would take me to Orca, and it was on HBO. I was like terrified of it with like, like the baby getting
Oh
washed.
no! That is like one of the most singularly traumatic movie moments. I begged for the same reason. The one sheet was in, or actually, I think it was even a bigger spread. It might have even been a 2-page.
Yeah,
And that the artwork for Orca, which was right close on the heels of the artwork for the '76 De Laurentiis King Kong. It had the same sort of spectacle to it. The whole the destruction of the entire, the entire town is in the shot, is in the poster.
yeah,
And I was expecting essentially Godzilla with a killer whale. And in those first 10 minutes, when the mother is killing herself against the propellers, and then the birth of the thing. I mean, I was
Oh my
so
God,
traumatized,
yeah.
and that was a
The way she
theatrical
makes is
experience.
terrifying too. Like it's just all upsetting. And then Bo Derek's leg.
Oh right, and that's
for a
isn't that
50-year-old movie.
horrible? It's
Yeah.
somehow more terrible to have a broken leg be bit off than just a normal leg.
And I was like not ready for it as a kid. I was like,
She already suffered so much trauma.
Right, it's got to
Yeah.
hurt more somehow. It's like putting your finger in a bullet wound or something. But and I saw Orca in the theaters just like I saw Grizzly, and it was like there's something about those moments that just never go away. They just never, they don't fade at all. So
but I'm glad that I had them though, because they're like we always talk about prophecy on this show too, and like the end of prophecy when the last bear shows up, that like baby one shows up as the helicopter goes away.
Yeah.
I saw that as a kid. I'm ready for what was going to happen. I just remember like I had nightmares for like a week after.
Yeah.
I was like, that thing is so terrifying looking. The rest of the movie is really not that scary when you're older, but as a kid, it's so different. Like, you know what I mean? Like you pick out these like little parts of it that get in your psyche that probably wouldn't as an adult.
yeah, that's true. It is. It's true. In a way, some movies, and I'm sure you guys talk about this sometimes. It's like looking at something that made such a tremendous impression as a kid. When obviously there are movies that you revisit at different points in your life, and I've revisited certain movies that I thought were profoundly disturbing as a child, and then I watched them as an adult, and it's not the same impression anymore.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like I wish I hadn't looked at them again because the memory is so stronger. And but then there are some movies like both of these that I think just become even richer for some reason watching them again, because they become even more daring in a way than you perceive them initially.
I know, like the commercial for "It's Alive" was one of those for me, where it was like,
devastating.
like I would literally cover I was like 4 or 5 when it was on. I would cover up and just start screaming, hoping that baby couldn't find. I thought it could see me through.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. That rotating bassinet with the final reveal of the claw. That was
Horrifying.
nasty as shit.
It's a great, but it's such a subtle little TV spot. It's like, and it's so effective. That, and like I know the Suspiria commercial of the skeleton combing her hair. It's not in the movie. It has nothing to do with the movie, but that's also like, wow. Like I was like, whatever that is, I want to see it. And like, I love like TV stuff like that. I work in advertising. So like, I'm like, that's how I got into copywriting, was from movie posters and movie ads. And just like, that's the simplest version of advertising to me. And it's like,
for sure. Well, I mean, to talk about the power of a one sheet. I mean, the Grizzly one sheet, the Neil Adams art for that thing was like, I mean, that alone, I don't know, stare at that all day,
Neil Adams did so many movies around this time too. So like you can pick up his art instantly. You're like, oh, that's, or it's one of his continuity guys. They all draw very similar.
Right.
But it's like, I just love it so much.
You guys both know how much the advertising turns me on for movies, and like how important that is for me. to see things like that. And like you mentioned, the It's Alive commercial and
Mhm.
so many ad campaigns were they were better than the actual movie sometime, or at least more impactful
Yeah.
than the actual film. So these moments are markers in our lives, where we saw all of these things. They're like, takes you right back to that experience of seeing it for the first time.
And like today, we
Magic.
don't have those 30-second TV spots as much to get us excited for a movie. Plus, we get like a 6-minute trailer that has everything in it. And it's
Correct.
I have the trailer trauma set that came out that was just the TV spots. It's like got like 300 TV spots on the Blu-ray.
Wow, that's cool.
And it still has the space for them where they say, check out your local drive-ins and theaters.
Well, I was also speaking of like that kind of advertising. Unless I misremember this, I think one of the earliest sort of surveillance camera on the audience spots was the one for Scanners. I remember the TV spot for Scanners was basically an audience reaction to the first head explosion. And it kept like, toggling back and forth between the guy banging on his desk, and then it just cut to night vision of the audience. It's all collectively being thrown out of it. That was enough for me, and I was running. To see.
Who knows? It may have even been real audience reactions.
Yeah, right.
Probably not, but
Yeah.
That's the stuff and Bill always shows the ads on this too. Like, I love when these movies talk to you into the drive-in or into the theater. And like, maybe when you got there, maybe you didn't get what you were promised, but so what? Like, you got in there and that's the excitement of it to me, like the ballyhoo of it. And just like the challenge almost for some of these movies where it would like challenge you of like this, like, and I love Grizzly a lot. I'm glad we're showing it because it's very close to Jaws on land. But someone sent me, I wrote that on IMDb, and someone sent me a letter, and they're like, "You're full of shit. It's not anything like Jaws." And I'm like, "Have you seen Grizzly? Like, have you watched?" Yeah,
but that's in a way, it's weird. Actually, you're mentioning the whole power of the advertisement. I mean, in many ways, I know we were going to talk a little later about the Sinister Cinema documentary, but that's really the core of that whole thing, the catalog, and the ads, along with the little synopses. That is enough to set your imagination on fire. In many ways, the movies themselves can't possibly live up to the possibilities that are opened up when you look at that artwork. But that's okay. It's almost impossible. I mean, when you try to think about like what movie posters where the movie itself is actually grander or somehow more profound than what the poster promises, that's pretty rare.
I had to teach a class at a college about how to be a copywriter, and I always talk about the first headline I remember was like, "Who will survive and what will be left of them." I always talk about that line as like perfect copywriting, because then you have to say, well, what next? Like, I have to see that, like,
right.
Like, and so creating that level of excitement to me is like what I'm always trying to do or teach like my writers to do. And it's hard, but I do medical advertising. It's nowhere near as sexy as a Toby Hooper. but on the other hand, like, you can take that energy hopefully. And, but I think about like those really great lines that are in these. And also Girdler was awesome at naming his movies. Like 3 and a Meat Hook is a great title. Asylum of Satan is a great title.
Yeah.
Like Grizzly, even a short name, but Grizzly's a great title. And it's like, they talk you in so well.
Maybe this is a good segue into your new project, Jack. Now, you've directed movies like Some Guy Who Kills People, Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus, and Wild Things 2. So you've done a lot of different genre work, but Sinister Cinema is your new. This is like a passion project for you. You're writer, director, producer.
Editor.
Tell us a little about that.
Well, I noticed that some of you have mentioned, I've certainly recognized, which is cool, the company, Sinister Cinema, which was, that catalog I was getting way back when I was a teenager. It was this first sort of door into another world of genre movies that I hadn't heard about. I mean, all of us who are dyed-in-the-wool geeks will know of certain titles that normal people will not know of, but Sinister Cinema was always presenting these films that I literally had never heard of, and the plots were, as they were summed up in the little TV guide, synopses that Greg Luce used to write, were also like incredibly enticing. It was all like what we're talking about. It was all like, you got to see this thing that you've never heard of. And there were always titles within the catalog that were more familiar, Night of the Living Dead and Carnival of Souls and things like that. But then there were these, most of them were just seemingly really obscure. And so my first taste of those movies came from ordering VHS tapes from those from that catalog. Anyway, so when I ultimately, not during the pandemic, it really wasn't during the pandemic, but in the last couple of years since moving up to the Pacific Northwest, I realized that Sinister Cinema was always in Oregon, where I live now. I figured I'd just call them up, because I was always enamored of this. I was so happy that they were still in business. I had no idea if it was a big company. I didn't know how many employees. And I called up, and it was just Greg, who's been running it pretty much as a mom and pop distribution company for 40 years, and he's still doing it. And he works with his daughter and one other employee. Both of them had recognized a couple of my films, so they said, "Oh yeah, you should talk to this guy, Dad." And I said, "Hey, nobody seems to have ever done a portrait or any kind of piece, a documentary on you. He's probably the oldest genre distributor still working."
Oh.
And he was game, and he was totally cool. So I just went up. I just basically went and visited him and sat down with him and saw the operation and interviewed him, and it kind of went from there. But it was great fun because it was like stepping inside this catalog for real. It was finally sort of touching this thing that had meant so much, as a growing up.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that era too, where it's like you had no idea what you were getting in these movies. Today, you can go on IMDb and you can read reviews, and you can read so much stuff. Even Nightmare USA or like a book about it. But some of these movies was like, yeah, I have no idea what it's going to be. And it's like, music was the same way back then. It's like you just took chances and you spent money, and hopefully you found something you liked and you started to build. And also waiting forever to see movies. Like there were certain movies you'd see in Fangoria or Starlog or whatever.
Right.
And like Laser Blast was a movie that never came to my video store. And there were certain movies, I don't know, based on the packages they bought in my neighborhood or whatever, but
yeah,
it's just crazy that like now they're all on my shelf and I can load any of them up in 2 seconds. I think we all collectively miss either that or the horror host era of like movies being picked for us and things just showing up.
Well, there's definitely, you're absolutely right. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, just something about what gives something value. And, you guys have talked about this, but the whole, when you go to a video store, when you actually have to physically rent something and take it home and put it into a machine,
yeah,
that imbues it with a certain value that is lost when something is just absolutely immediately available. And the rarity of something is the other thing. It's like, if something is elusive and you're only going to get or Star Wars or whatever, like waiting 3 years for a Star Wars movie is totally different from next week on Star Wars, which is what it is now.
Yeah.
So you lose something. And like you said, having only a slight like sliver of a perception of what it is, whether it's from a poster or a lobby card or 30-second TV spot, and that's it, is much different than going into something having already experienced, tons of scenes already and what have you. It's a totally different, it's a totally different experience.
And it's funny too, because you'll talk to somebody about a movie back then and they'd be like, "Oh, it's horrible." And then you're like, "Oh, well, I loved it." So you almost have to like find your own peaks and valleys within these movies and hunt down stuff, and like whose opinion can you trust, and also how do you get it?
That's so valid. I mean, I say that to students who are like in whether they're in film school or when they get out into the working professionally, and so much of dealing in the business is dealing with other people's opinions and notes and audience test screenings and all that stuff, which is like stuff that I hate. But to your point, I think what's more important and what I tell them is who is giving you this note. That's more important than anything else. Like if you have respect and like somebody you respect telling you something, is totally different from just anybody saying something, And the trouble is that studio executives have a tendency to listen to anybody, in an effort to, to squash down any fears that they might be making a mistake.
What about tonight's films? I mean, because you chose Grizzly. I think you chose the Manitou too, didn't you, Jack? Or
I think so. I think, I had said Grizzly, and then I had brought up Day of the Animals, which has obviously been done. You guys had done. But the both of those films were films that I saw at 10 years old and 12 years old, respectively, and at the theater. Right at the time, when I was first, again, this is the 70s, so this is where 10-year-olds allowed to just disappear for the day and ride their bike to the movies.
Yeah.
But
Strange.
and the funny thing is, for both of those films, I had not really seen the bigger templates for those films. I had not seen Jaws before I had seen Grizzly. I had not been allowed to see Jaws, even though Jaws was PG. For some reason, my parents were not taking me to see Jaws at 9. But Grizzly, I went to, and so it's interesting because obviously, the history is that that Grizzly is a beat for beat, as we said, sort of Jaws on land kind of thing. I didn't have that reference. It was completely new, for me. And the Manitou obviously has, The Exorcist is an enormous part of that too, and any kind of possession pick that followed. And I hadn't seen any of those either prior to the Manitou. So my first sort of taste of this supernatural early body horror, when there wasn't really any body horror, that all that stuff, possession stuff, was brand new. So both of those movies at that age were big, made huge impressions. And I think the thing with Girdler, when you watch a lot of low budget movies, you can tell when somebody really does have there's the expression, they can hear the music. In other words, like, despite the low budget, despite even the exploitation sort of motivations, like, this will make money, you can still tell when a filmmaker actually, has a real feel and a real passion for movie making. And that was the thing that even as a young kid, starting to make Super 8 movies, I could tell that this guy enjoyed making films. There was a joy in the stuff. Stuff that was inspired, in terms of how he staged it and how he shot it, despite the lower budget. Yeah.
What were some of your Super 8 movies you did?
As soon as I was able, my little sister is like 3 years younger than me, so she had no choice. I drafted her into all of these. They were all horror, science fiction, splatter movies that I did, and I was constantly, pouring blood all over my sister's head, and so they were, Mummy versus Frankenstein and Attack of the Wizards and anything I could think of. That it was all violence. It was all just inspired by what I was watching on television. And like a lot of kids, I think that's a very specific generational thing. 70s kids appropriating the family Super 8 camera and deciding to sort of venture out and make their own stuff is like a classic step towards ultimately making movies professionally for a lot of people my age. I think that's the one thing they got right. I mean, the film Super 8, which is not a very memorable movie, what it does get right, really, I think, is that time when kids were starting to like. In fact, there was a Disney movie. Do you remember this? The one with Johnny Whittaker. Was it called The Curse of Frankenstein's Castle, or the
Mystery of Dracula's Castle?
Mystery of Dracula's Castle, right? And that one is like, if you look at that movie, they're kids going to a spooky haunted house to make a Super 8 movie. That's actually like the plot. And I remember seeing that right about that time, saying, "Wow, that's amazing! There's actually a movie about kids making their own movie." Yeah, there's nothing. I mean, in answer to your question, Bill, there's nothing to speak of worth showing. but
but I just was curious as to what was your ideas.
Yeah, it was all monster horror. I think what you end up doing, or at least what I ended up doing when I was making a Super 8 film, maybe partly because you only have 3 minutes in a cartridge, is to just literally cut to the chase. Like, you don't spend any time developing character, building, and it's just like right out of the gate, it's like here's a sequence of terror, or a sequence of action, or whatever. So those were the things that
that's what put me off filmmaking, because I begged for a Super 8 camera, and then when I got it, I realized that you could only shoot like 3.5 minutes at a time, and I was like, oh, forget that. I think I did a couple of things. I did some stop motion animation, which was actually, it came out so much better because you had to wait. You had to take it and get it developed. You didn't know whether it was going to look like anything. There was that moment of like threading the film into the projector, and you're like, okay, I'm going to see it for the first time. Yeah, no, stop motion was huge. I mean, I had, at that same time, I had been watching, all the Willis O'Brien stuff. I mean, I'd seen King Kong 1,000 times, and Mighty Joe Young, and all the Harryhausen films. And stop motion was like the first thing I tried. I realized I didn't have the patience for it. I mean, I just watched the Phil Tippett documentary, which is really good, actually. And there is something about like disappearing inside the process of animation where you're just not only comfortable, you want to live in this
this extremely slowed down world. It's something that I can appreciate as I edit something, because you can easily edit and 14 hours goes by and you're just in it. But as an animator, I didn't have that patience that I think it really takes. You have to slow down your brain into this other thing. And but I'm a great admirer of it. Ultimately, when I ended up doing that film for MTV in the early 2000s, Monster Island, it was all that love of stop motion came out, because I was finally able to do a stop motion, monster movie, live action combo, and I even named the Adam West character Dr. Harryhausen, in that movie. I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
But that's cool.
I think that was the first thing that I identified with you, because you bought an issue of the magazine, and I think we talked online a couple of times, and I was like, Jack Perez. He was like, oh my God, it's the guy that made Monster Island. That's the one I remembered.
That's right. Yeah, I think that was the first time.
exciting.
Yeah. And by the way, I mean, the magazine. I mean, the magazine is just that's everything that we've been talking about. It's all the good stuff. It's all the promise. It's all the initial excitement about the thing, which really can't be topped. I mean, yes, you see a poster for Star Wars for the first time. You see Star Wars. Yes, you're going to be. There's certain circumstances, but nothing really matches that high of the anticipatory high. And I think that the magazine is just like, it's like Sinister Cinema. It's like you're just saturated with this feeling, which is why it's such a joy, to
That's what it's about. It's really about that. It's about nostalgia and the way we experience these films, as well as, learning things that maybe we didn't know about the making of the movie. We were talking earlier about how, something is a hit, and then you're going to get 10, 15 more films just like that, because this one was a hit. There was another version of that going on in the 70s, but somehow even the imitators managed to be a little bit more original than what we see today.
Yeah, that's the thing. Grizzly, again, like they basically really studied, they really studied the Carl Gottlieb script for Jaws, and they really we need this scene, we need this scene, we need these characters, but somehow it still feels very much its own thing, despite the high level of Xeroxing or transposing. There's just something. Maybe it's the Grizzly thing itself. I mean, I had never seen a bear, on the Rampage movie before, and something about a giant bear just by itself was inspired enough. So who cares if all of this stuff is really lifted from Jaws? And truthfully, when I looked at it again, it's like the attack scenes. I don't know why they really are way more disturbing than anything in Jaws.
I think so too. Yeah,
they're just more fucked up. They're fucked up in concept. And in terms of again how he stages and shoots and cuts those sequences. There's some gnarly stuff in there. And I don't know, like the little kid getting attacked and killed or getting his arms taken off. To me, I have no problem seeing the little kid getting eaten on the raft in Jaws for some reason. But that scene in Grizzly, the comparable scene in Grizzly is horrible.
I think out of the water, it's more visceral because not as much is hidden. The chances of you getting killed by a shark are, you have to go to the water and you have to be there versus even though a lot of us live in cities, I live very close to the woods. Maybe not an 18-foot grizzly could come out, but bears broke into one of our Sears stores a couple of years ago, and one of them. Right. So it's
it's plausible. Like I said, I'm in Portland now. After 30 years in LA, where grizzly's not going to get me. Now I'm grizzly's knocking on my door. So it's a lot more.
Have you seen any bears in person there?
I haven't, but people are constantly. This is everybody wants to go hiking and camping, and anytime the concept of, and I guess this is the New York City kid in me. Anybody brings up overnight camping, I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like you're just asking for Grizzly to come in and shred you. There's no way. There's just no way.
It's a movie, but it's real too.
Yeah. It's also something about those moments where somebody is being, whether it's in the opening attack in Grizzly, or it's the idea of being carried. And even that in and of itself, when you think about it, is stolen in part from Jaws, the idea of being bitten by something and then dragged through the water.
Yeah.
Like Chrissy in the opening attack, but something about picking up a woman and traveling her as she's being killed through space. There's something about that is really visceral and horrible, and way more limbs, I guess, are amiss in Grizzly than in Jaws. A lot of limbs go, including the horse head, right? Yeah, that stuff just never went away. It's just that I saw that. You see something like that at 10, doesn't go away. It's like that first time you talk about like turning something on or finding something accidentally. I remember seeing Flesh Eaters for the first time, like late at night on a little like 12-inch black and white screen, and that's seeing the guy's like intestines pouring out of his stomach, like you don't. How can you possibly anticipate seeing something like that?
Yeah,
Flesh Eaters was the one where they scratched into the film itself to make the monster, wasn't it?
I think there was, the Flesh Eaters is the one where they're corrosive, bacteria, and one guy drinks basically a glass filled with Flesh Eaters, and it just bores, out of his stomach. It's like a fire hose coming out of his stomach. At least that's how I remember. And there's just stuff like that, that you just, if you haven't seen anything like that, you can't unsee that.
My Flesh Eaters never do that to me.
Good.
I remember one of my friends is like that about Barbarella, because the scene with the little things
robot?
with the teeth. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the robot. Yeah.
It like terrifying for years. He had no idea what a movie it was. And then finally he like got to 4K and he's like, this is the movie that's been terrifying me. Like that I've had nightmares since I was like 8. Like, yeah, it was Barbarella. And he's like, I would have never guessed. Like, it seems innocuous now. But when you're that young and the fact that something that small is that dangerous and it comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had the opposite experience. My mom was like, you got to go to bed now. I think like once she was floating around, all her clothes got torn off. I didn't think they realized that Barbarella wasn't going to be a PG movie. Yeah, I know. I watched it again later. Don't worry. It worked out.
That's a drag.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, look at this.
So we have some ad artwork to look at. There's a lot of ads for tonight's first feature. Both of them, actually. Lots of good stuff. And we have, here's the iconic version of the one sheet. Now, this is almost like a disaster film, too, because there's a cast panel as well.
Right.
Yeah.
There's all the pictures. So this is a high-class film when you see these.
That's right.
And I like, Jack, that you brought up the Neil Adams art, too. It's so great here because he created all this, like, black space between her and him, like, where she's just really small within him. And it's perfect for an ad. Like, it's him. He worked in advertising a lot, too. So, like, he knows, like, how to put together a great look.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right, and and again, even if I never really thought about it, but even the poster, which again I think this is a stronger poster than even the Jaws poster, but clearly the mandate was, if you think about it, it's just a flop of the Jaws.
Yeah,
it's really just inverted Jaws, but I feel like this was so much more striking in a way. The artwork itself is just beautiful, and it's funny you mentioned, Bill, the disaster thing, because I really feel like even the opening of Grizzly with the whole helicopter sort of montage, it's a sort of this cold open where Andrew Prine is like talking, and even that, the fact that the audio is actually coming from the actual headset. It's the headset audio as he goes on about the beauty of national parks or whatever.
Oh yeah,
which was a device that wasn't, I think Coppola used it later in Apocalypse Now, where you actually hear sort of the communication between the helicopter pilots through the headsets. But then it breaks into this big sort of towering inferno opening musical, like the score itself is like this sweeping, it has this sweeping disaster movie kind of quality to it.
And the logo has more of a disaster look than a Jaws logo. Like it has like the perspective style logo, like Towering Inferno.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Bill, this is your style ad with the stars and everything. This is very...
Oh, yeah. I think I literally hollowed this out to make one of our Drive-In Asylum weekly ads.
I love ads that talk shit on movies that maybe shouldn't. More satisfying than Jaws. Like, I love that.
Don't do that.
Yeah, like, okay, guys, we get it, but you don't have to hit us over the head with.
Don't antagonize Spielberg, please.
It doesn't. My favorite ad types Bill shows are the ones talking shit on Hitchcock, where they're always like, so much better than Hitchcock, and like, just leave him alone. Come on.
Really, Mr. Hitchcock? Have you really made a better movie than the other?
In the Hitchcock tradition.
Right.
Here's a couple for you. This is a double feature. Wow.
Yeah, that's good.
2 rip-off movies.
Mhm.
Actually, I use that term lovingly, not
Yeah.
derogatory. But yeah, they definitely were thinking of other big hit movies when they made these 2.
Oh,
Oh,
my
that's
god,
another-
that's
wow.
a great double feature.
Wow.
Oh.
Are you into Planet of the Apes, Jack?
Oh yeah. I have to admit, I haven't really. I'm so much a lover of the original series that
Mhm.
I kind of like. I saw a few bits from the Burton thing, and then I never really wanted to see any of the new ones. I mean, I've seen pieces, but I love the original.
Oh,
the
yeah.
original series, of course.
Oh,
So yes, they did
Yeah.
pair those 2 together. Obviously, this is after the original run of Grizzly, when Girdler made another film that was very similar, Day of the Animal.
The funny thing about Day of the Animals is that when you go back to the Super 8 days, is when my sister and I were making these Super 8 movies, there was a point where we graduated to, like, well, let's come up with a bigger idea other than just killing or whatever. And we literally came up with this idea that is almost the identical plot of what Day of the Animals turned out to be. And we were writing this thing, and then Day of the Animals came out, and we were convinced that somehow they had stolen our idea for Day of the. And it's a thing. It's a Hollywood. Like anybody who's been in Hollywood a long time has had something like legitimately ripped off. And I actually had something legitimately ripped off when I was starting to work. But as a little kid, even then we were kind of like, we had the idea for Day of the Animals, and they did, and they did. Day of the Animals is actually, I feel like, is less interesting because of the variety. It's because of the fact that it isn't distilled down into one sort of bear.
it has
I-
great bullshit signs though that like
Yeah.
sunspots are causing this.
Right.
Like that movie and Autopsy both blame a lot of crazy stuff on sunspots.
That's right, Sunspot.
There's a Pittsburgh ad.
Oh.
There it is. So it was at the Bellevue, which is now
Yeah.
a Dollar General.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think any of these are open anymore. Eastland's gone. I definitely know that. I used to wrestle in that building.
It's funny. I just saw in the comments here, Daryl mentioned that the Apes movie could be traumatizing, and I completely agree. The end of Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
That is,
Oh,
that
yeah.
is fucking horrible. I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah.
the murder and the baby falling off into the water. That's horrible. And I have to say, even the end of Beneath the James Franciscus it's shot through the head. And slides down the wall. These are brutal images.
Yeah. They're very like almost they're definitely end of the world movies, but like they get so dark. Like
Yeah, really dark. Yeah,
I love that like the apes it's not just the apes, there's like the mutants, there's this whole world of like crazy stuff within the movies once you get into them.
But I think even Grizzly, manages to be more 70s in tone than even Jaws. Like the end of Grizzly feels more like the end of like a Dirty Harry movie in a way. It has this real melancholy. And to Christopher George's, Christopher George was never like the master thespian, but the final shot in Grizzly of Christopher George sort of processing, they give him there's a long slow zoom as he processes everything, including bazooking the Grizzly, and there's a real, sad music cue that accompanies it, and then a classic sort of high angle as he walks away, and it's just it's a classic downer, which even Jaws goes for an upbeat, like yay, it's a new day and we made it, and that's not the end of Grizzly at all.
It wasn't the bear's fault.
Right. It's almost like I feel like there's something where he's like he feels badly for having blown up the bear.
Bill, this is a dream.
Yeah, I knew this was going to get a gasp out of Sam.
As soon as I saw Harry Novak's name in it too, I was like, well,
talk about a title, man. Rattlers is like the best title you can get.
The tagline is "What an awful way to die."
Right. And again, a time when it was okay to kill kids. Rattlers has that. It's like just kill the kids. It's okay. They fall into the snake pit and they get.
Oh my god!
I can't remember if the little boy in Grizzly dies.
I think he's just slightly dismembered. But I think he survives.
I should mention too. I have the novelization for Grizzly.
Oh wow!
And the boy's fate is the opposite in the book. So
what happens in the book?
It's the little boy's fate is the opposite. He either dies in the book and lives in the movie, or the other way around.
Gotcha,
I can't remember which is which. The book is really violent. It's super gory, like
Oh,
even
cool. I mean,
way
that's
more.
what I was. Well, I mean, that's another thing. I mean, the novelization, particularly for movies that I couldn't see. Like, I distinctly remember like standing in like a thrifty, magazine aisle reading the novelization of The Omen.
Yeah.
The Donna
yeah.
Omen. I wasn't allowed to see it. And basically getting as much information as I could. From just flipping through the book.
Looking for
This
the good
one-
parts.
This
for
one
the good
even
part.
ripped off the maybe too intense for young children from Jaws. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
it went all the way. I love at movies that invite comparisons to other movies, like not since Jaws, like 2 exclamation points too, which is a copywriter I know means that we're really telling you that this is true.
This was
Yeah.
the other design for the one sheet too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there actually is a one sheet like this, but you'll see more of it in an ad.
And by the way, anything with a warning is just that's
yeah.
just all the better. I remember when the original magazines for HBO, the monthly magazine, nothing caught my eye more than graphic violence.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
graphic violence. That's all you need to say. It's like that's just taboo. Of course, I got to see that. If it's
I always joke
graphic
that like I started reading the Pittsburgh Catholic as a kid in like 81 after church, and like all the movies that got the morally offensive rating from the Pittsburgh diocese were like, they're my film canon. It's like
right.
especially like Amityville 2, which is like the most anti-Catholic movie ever.
Oh,
Like,
oh my
like,
God.
they literally told us in church, like, if anybody goes to see this, it is morally horrible to go see it.
You're
should
going
not.
to hell.
Yeah, they actually brought it up in church, and I was like, I got to see this fucking
Well, if
movie.
they bring it up, then that's
Yeah.
it. That's the last greatest endorsement you can get, right?
Yeah, Bill, Legend of Spider-Force with Grizzly is insane. And then adding in Sergio Martino's Sex with a Smile is... did I go back in time and plan this? Or Night of the Witches, too. It feels like these are
Night
all...
of the Witches is the
yeah.
first one I noticed.
Oh, my God.
Definitely a movie where nothing happens.
Do you like
Night
that
of the
they
Witches.
put an X on Grizzly even though it's a PG movie?
I'm not sure what that X is supposed to represent because it says really big at the top of the ad that it's PG.
Yeah.
So I don't
And
know.
maybe it's just like that day and that day. Or maybe they're just like, hey, if you get X out of it, cool.
They were smoking. That's all it was. God bless them.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Oh my
yeah, this is
God.
a nice alternate ad design,
Wow,
I think.
I don't think I've ever seen this one. Yeah, this one's wild.
Yeah.
I can remember when Grizzly was on network TV.
Well,
And it had one of those grave announcers that came on before that was like, due to the nature of this motion
Right.
picture, parental discretion
Right,
is
which is
advised.
another appetite creator. Absolutely,
Yeah.
well, especially like you said about HBO, Jack, when the HBO warnings came up before, I always looked at it as a checklist as a kid. I'm like, oh, this
absolutely.
has, like sexual content, graphic violence. Like, yes, like this is
Right.
why I'm staying up.
Right.
This is really nice too with this smaller format one. I like this size.
Oh, look at those lines. They're
Oh.
beautiful.
This has
The
really
whole
nice-
movie section was laid out like this. I think this is from El Paso.
Yeah, it outbites Jaws. I haven't seen that before. Outbites.
Going camping, see Grizzly
Yeah.
first.
Somebody was riffing on that. I love it.
Yeah, I love it.
A night of eco horror carnage awaits you.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
I really do like Day of the Animals though, and I always talk about it when Leslie Nielsen takes his shirt off to fight a bear.
Yeah,
It's
you guys were
hilarious.
talking about that yesterday. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a key scene for you.
Oh my god, it's so good! It's like lightning everywhere, and he's also an advertising executive in it. So I've worked for a lot of guys like him, and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, totally. He would
It's
be the one to
personal
freak
for
out.
you.
Yeah, it's very personal. I'm like, when that bear hits him, I'm like, it's just justification for years
Right.
of having to redo copy. Yeah,
Right, exactly. Vengeance is mine.
This would make a great T-shirt.
Yeah.
yeah. I like that she looks so innocent, just sitting there. Oh,
Yeah, she's just
La-di-da-di-da.
stoking the fire.
it's even more than Jaws. Like, is she swimming in Jaws? The girl swimming in Jaws, and like, of course you expect something to be beneath you, but like in this, she's like, well, there's
Nope.
nothing behind me.
Nope, nothing behind me.
Look at this
Slid
one.
this. Well, Slid this. Well, it's funny. The Crater Lake Monster, again, because Crater Lake is actually up here in Portland, and Greg
Yeah.
Luce of Sinister Cinema lives right next to Crater Lake. And it shows you how movie nerds' worlds are forever corrupted. Because that's my only reference to Crater Lake is the Crater Lake Monster. Like I wouldn't have known the Crater Lake was even a thing, except for the Crater Lake. And Slithis was one of those movies that I couldn't wait to rent. When that popped up in early video store days, that to me was I was something about that particular artwork got me. Even though it's essentially just, Creature from the Black Lagoon meets a slee stack, it was still like, I don't know, something about it. Yeah.
My favorite thing about Slithis is for $0.25 you could join the Slithis Survival Club, and he would skip your house and not kill you if you would set $0.25 in. He would ask to see that card in your wallet. I don't think Slithis was that smart to do it, but as a kid, I'm like, well, I told my mom, like, I gotta get this Slithis card because I don't want him to
called
put us
it
in
a
danger.
survival kit, like
Survival kit,
get, like a weapon in it or something, but it was a folded sheet of paper.
Well, Girdler did that too for Asylum of Satan, where you got seeds to protect your soul from Satan.
Wow.
Everybody's trying to be William Castle a little bit.
Seeds will save us. Here's a high contrast moment to take in. Oh, look at this one. I love this one.
Yeah, Christopher mentioned he saw Grizzly on WOR Channel 9. That's out in New York. I mean, I remember seeing it when it ran.
We got that in Pittsburgh, Jack, and Fright Night was a must for me every week.
Oh, definitely.
WOR was weird because at 1 a.m, they would just start playing horse racing, and you're like,
oh, that's weird.
Yeah, they would have like OT. They would tell you where to go to OTB betting, and I was like 9. And I'm like, "What's OTB?" My dad's like, "It's gambling stuff. Don't worry about it."
Right, OTB.
Yeah.
Don't look in there. It's funny you mentioned about Land of the Lost. My wife and I were just talking about, it's of that period. There's no way you can be born later and still look at that with the same eyes. But there was actually, I remember there's one Land of the Lost episode that really messed me up. Because I don't know if you remember this, but there's a moment where Will goes into the pylons or whatever, and Enoch, the good, the wise oracle slee stack, manipulates the board, and for a brief moment, the portal opens and he can see his mother, like gardening or something.
Yeah,
But it's a window that's going to only be open for like 10 minutes, and he has the choice. He can go through and go back, but he knows there's not enough time to tell Holly or his father what's happened. They'll think he just died, and he's wrestling with this like Sophie's choice. Like, what do I do? Do I go through? Do I not go? And he obviously opts not to go through. It's a great example of how you can actually, like, there's like real drama in this ridiculous childlike fantasy. It's still like, it's still memorable.
So why don't we take a short commercial break? Afterwards, we're going to do the drink segment, and we'll have more to talk about with our special guest, Jack Perez. Go.
Right on.
Thanks a lot, Citibank. You had to make your Visa and MasterCard better than other banks. Just by using them, we earn bonuses called Citi Dollars. Now, they could have saved us up to 40% on a color TV or a stereo. But we used ours to get something strictly for Vincent's amusement.
Oh, isn't it wonderful?
Visa and MasterCard from Citibank. It's the bank that makes them better.
What makes me homesick?
You have this new Cross Your Heart bra in France?
Cross your heart?
New elegance bras from Playtex Cross Your Heart. Lush tricot, lace applique, elegant feeling.
Not French?
As American as French toast. And new elegance lifts and separates for a better figure.
C'est magnifique.
3 cheers for the red, white, and blue. New elegance bras from Playtex Cross Your Heart. Elegance you can feel.
My husband's picking me up, Madge.
Wait, don't let him see those hands. He may drop you.
It's dishwashing. What'll I try?
Well, everything. And use palm olive liquid. Softens hands while you do dishes. I'm softening your hands in it right now.
Feels soft, like a lotion.
Well, sure. Palm olive's really mild.
Must be. But how does it clean?
Great.
Right, Madge. The same palm olive formula that's so gentle on your hands also cleans the toughest grease, leaves everything spotless.
And palm olive softens hands while you do dishes.
Hi, George.
Ooh, soft.
Madge, palm olive's worth a mint.
Well, here's a mint. Where's my palm olive? Remember, palm olive softens hands while you do dishes.
It's a grizzly.
Oh. You scared of this movie? Or do you feel a kinship to the grizzly bear?
I could take him.
You could take him?
I could take him.
You like Prophecy Bear better?
I am Prophecy Bear. Didn't want to tell you, but...
Good boy. All right, Cubby. Cubby's going to help us make the grizzly bear. Got an ounce amaretto, ounce Jägermeister, ounce Bailey's, 2.5 ounces of milk. Again, every country has contributed to this drink. I'm trying to bring the world together in a glass. Kind of like, well, not totally a White Russian. It's got milk in it. That's what the ice. That's the only thing. If you like Kahlua better than Bailey's, you can always do that too for this.
Is this the Starbucks?
This is Starbucks. You take this to Starbucks and say, I have a mobile order for Cubby. Pazuzu. I have a mobile order for Pazuzu. Oh, man. If only Starbucks could make this.
I can change my name on the app. It'll say Pazuzu.
Oh, my God. I have a mobile order for Pazuzu. Is that your wife's name? Yeah. What's her name? This is really good. The Jägermeister is unexpected. When I don't even know what, the weird cough syrupy goodness of it comes back into the milk. What? I love it. Anyways, enjoy Grizzly. Enjoy this drink, Grizzly Bear. Enjoy Cubby.
The Grizzly is grazing. The Grizzly is eating cat food.
That's how it starts. See you in a bit.
Pazuzu. Bringing the world together in a glass.
Yeah.
That was a great line.
So how was the Jaeger was dominating?
Yeah, it's very dominant. I have it here. I mixed it up. Now that it's like actually stirred up for a bit, it's good. But it has like the spice in it because there's like 70 botanicals that they say that are in Jaeger, but it comes through. So imagine a White Russian that had like the spiciness of the Jaeger popping through. That's kind of the flavor of it. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's for everybody, but as someone that drinks a lot of Jaeger, I like it. When you go to the drive-in in 2 weeks with me, that's when there'll be a lot of drinking at the drive-in.
I can't wait. Oh my God. Jack, you would love this event. I'm sure you've done stuff like this too, but
what is it?
The Super Drive-In Monsterama.
Oh, wow.
It's at a rural drive-in near Pittsburgh. It's about an hour away from Pittsburgh and about an hour away from where Sam lives. 2 nights, 8 movies.
Wow.
The first night they're doing the first 4 Nightmare on Elm Street films.
Right.
The second night is a little more diverse. We've got Frankenhooker.
Oh, cool.
Basket Case 2.
Great.
Doom Asylum and Brain Damage.
Oh, right on.
And
That's
Patty Mullen is going to be there too in person. Frankenhooker
cool.
herself is going to be there for photos and autographs.
Wow, I envy you. That sounds like a great evening.
And there's trailers and all the old ads and stuff in between.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So
it's a total immersive experience. There will be a Drive-In Asylum trailer up on that big screen. I live for that moment every single time. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, super cool.
The best part of it is like we watched like Toolbox Murders a couple of the drive-ins ago, and like I like it, but now I love it after watching it with like 6 or 7 of us sitting together. It was like this is like the perfect viewing because we get so used now to like we're very insular how we watch movies now,
right?
And especially for older ones, it's rare to get to see them with a crowd of people, and it was awesome. Like we had a blast. And Bill and I also went to another one where it was the car and Christine, and
oh, that's great.
Yeah, and there's like a metal plate right in front of the drive-in near the end of the car when they're chasing it into the car's jaws as well. They blow it up, so a big tractor trailer went over that metal plate and everybody yelled at the same time because
that's awesome.
It like the car real. And it was like, wow.
It's surround sound.
That car was like a seminal movie of my childhood because it was an HBO every night movie. Cause that's when HBO had 12 movies. It was on so much, and
it was just I mean, it's like that movie is also just like there's something like it's like Grizzly. There's just something very like distilled down, pure. It's like a bold graphic stroke. Whatever the movie is, actually, is it's like the idea of the car is amazing. There was a period when I was doing when I was first starting out when I was working on Xena, and one of the producers there was talking to me about do a car reboot. We should reboot the car, and I was like, wow, that would really be something. Never licked it, but it was like it was still like I still had that little kid car thing. Like I tried to show the car to my wife recently. This is one of those things. Again, like you have if you haven't seen it through that lens, I think, at that time, it's just no way, it just looks like, a mess.
My wife will not watch it. Like, even at the drive-in, she was there with us, and she's like, "I'm going to go to sleep." And I was like,
Right.
"You've never seen the car, please." It was like right over my birthday. I'm like, "This is what I want for my birthday. I want you to watch the car." She's like, "I can't do it. I can't watch it."
Oh man.
Yeah, I think the car is actually really scary, even though it's silly.
Mhm.
It's both silly and scary, and those are the best kinds of movies where like you can laugh, but then something really terrifying happens, like that opening scene with the kids on the bikes.
Yes,
at the
yes,
beginning
yes,
of-
and the horn,
That's
and the horn.
really scary. Yeah,
Super scary. And Don actually just, yeah, you're right. Don says it's like an adaptation of an unpublished Stephen King novel. I think that's right. It does have that very specific, it all kind of boiled down to this one little town, everything existing in this one world with these eccentrics.
It was the first movie I ever saw too, where somebody got killed that I did not expect to get killed. Spoiler to everybody that hasn't seen the car, but
Right.
when
That's
when his girl gets killed, and like you see it coming through, that the light coming closer and closer. As a kid, I remember watching and being like, certainly he's going to save her at the last second, and no, and it was like it was very stunning when it happened.
Yeah.
The end of
She
it's
was
kind of
so nice.
ridiculous, but I kind of, the more I watch it, the more I kind of like it. Now I think that's a movie that I'm a big apologist for, because it was my grandfather's favorite movie, and like we would have long discussions about it. Like he actually had a horn on his El Camino that sounded like
the horn is unforgettable. And by the way, I mean the rollover, the flip down, that's like, that's just totally badass.
So we got a couple more minutes before it's time to watch the movie. Let's talk some more about the Sinister Cinema story. First of all, when is it going to be publicly available and where?
Yeah, good question. Right now, it's going to come. Actually, it's Sinister Cinema is actually going to put it out later this year, and then TerrorVision is going to put it out on Blu-ray with as part of like what we've been talking to Greg about through TerrorVision is this idea of sort of cleaning up some Sinister Cinema titles and releasing them on Blu-ray, because Sinister Cinema sort of stops at DVD, there are so many titles that are in the catalog, and so my idea is that we would release the documentary on Blu-ray with one or two Sinister Cinema cleaned up titles, and then potentially do a series. And in that case, what I would end up doing is actually doing almost another installment of the documentary, because this documentary is more like as you've seen it, it's more like almost like a self-portrait. It's really just Greg sort of telling his own story, which was the format I chose for this. So it's not really a traditional objective documentary where a lot of other people weigh in, but I do think like a second part where people like ourselves and filmmakers and current distributors and just fans will have a lot to say about Sinister Cinema, and in that way we can kind of keep it going. So that's sort of the plan right now. And I've submitted to like you do. I've been doing my whole life. I've submitted to a few festivals, and we'll see if it plays at some of the genre festivals. That's really more up to them. But it'll be out there. It'll definitely be out there at some point this year.
Sam and I were lucky to see it, and it really is engrossing. I was sad when it ended. I was like, no, it's not over yet, is it?
Well, good. Then I really appreciate that. And I, obviously I'm preaching to the choir, but also I think I think you guys would be perfect to talk about, what titles. I think what the fun thing might be for perhaps extending this is to do what I do with Greg, which is I asked him to kind of pick, a handful of the titles within the catalog that mean something personal to him, and then kind of let him go wild in talking about like we do. And I think it'd be so much fun to just ask you guys to go like, pick one of your films and then go into it, basically telling somebody who's never seen it why this thing should be seen. And that in and of itself, intercut with moments from that film, I think is very watchable, So yeah, that's the plan moving forward.
You were talking earlier about people like critics, the influence of critics, and I don't really see what we do as film criticism. It's more like curating maybe is a better word.
Evangelizing really
Yeah.
is what it
Yes.
is. You know, I mean, it's really about speaking. Like you should be, behold the car.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Here's why I like it.
Right.
Well, Bill
why I
knows
don't
there's
think
certain
it's dumb.
movies that like I am definitely an evangelist for, and then people watch them. They're like, "What do you see in this movie?" But it's like I get like this. I call it like movie drugs. Like I get this high from them where it's like, wow, like this movie made me feel better about life and hopeful, and like as silly as it might be. And like I love that feeling, and I want people to share that feeling and get to see it and be like, "Hey, this is what I love about it."
Yeah.
As goofy as like a movie like Night Train to Terror is, or like a Jess Franco movie, like to me, I get something from them, and hopefully other people do. I have to tell you, because you're on the show, I really do like 666 The Child a lot.
Oh my god,
I really do. But I'm a big fan of any like possession, omen-esque stuff.
Well,
I
that's
really
funny
like
you
it.
mentioned that because Bill was talking about like we were talking just briefly before the show started. Like, is it okay to talk about like certain movies? Or some people,
Yeah.
you bring up a movie and they go, "Oh God, don't whatever."
Yeah.
And it's so funny. It's like anything. Like The Child is one of those movies where I made it at a real low point where there were other movies that I'd wanted to make that had fallen through, and it was, getting hard to pay the rent. And it was like a really low ebb. It's definitely like, when they talk about the peaks and valleys, this parabola of show business, it's absolutely true. And, but so when this was put forward, which was really, again, from an the origins are exploitation. Like, let's make an Omen knockoff because the new Omen movie is coming out. So let's do that. That's what's behind that. Funny enough, it wasn't called The Child. I took that because of the Child movie. The
That's
Child,
one of Bill's favorite movies.
and,
ever.
and that
Yeah.
poster and Let's Play
Yeah.
Hide and Go Kill. The Child was like, that's why I made it The Child. I figured no one would know. They wouldn't know. It's like it fits. But truthfully,
people
it was, right. But it was easy for me, despite how where I was coming from, to dig into my real genuine love of the original Omen, the Donner Omen. And so, even though it was made for 2 cents and everything was, everything they were trying to do was they were trying to make a lousy movie. I was still trying to bring something, some of the love of at least the original Omen into it as much as I could, despite the.
I like
the
it more than the Omen remake.
Oh, good. All right. Well, that's something.
No, because it's like you can tell that like it's made by people that you like you said you love the Omen versus like the remake feels more like the exploitation cash in because they have the title, and it's like it doesn't have like. It's hard to say the Omen's joyous, right? But I think to someone that loves the movie, especially the second one is for me because it's like a very dark roller coaster ride. But it's like someone that loves that movie, like you can pick that up from it. And that's what I really liked about it. And I got to tell you, I really like your Wild Things movie too. I think it does. It's a big challenge because people knew the first one so well. It gets in so much of it, but it's way better than and I mean this in the most positive way.
No, I appreciate
way better than
that.
has any right to be because when you see it, you're like, yeah, it's a sequel, but it's like it works and it's got so many twists and turns, and I'm a big Jawa fan, so I can see some of the dullness in it, but I love that about it. Like it's Arrow put it out. It's wild that it's out in that set.
Yeah, well, I'm very lucky to have made as many films as I had, and there's a handful of them that are definitely more personal. Some guy who kills people, and Cucaracha, and a couple others that are like the movies that are definitely more my personality. And everything else I got to make, I'm still super lucky, and at least I was able to source my love of all the films that I saw growing up and sort of pour that in. But again, going back to Girdler, I think that is the difference, really. It's like there's an intangible thing. No matter how low budget a movie is, if there's actual love in that recipe, you can feel it, and it makes all the difference between something being resonant and meaningful. Even if it's a splatter movie, like if you can feel the love in the thing, that's a huge ingredient. That is, if it's missing, it's like you said, you end up with something very cold. And it's not something you remember fondly.
I got to tell you, the Bill is very excited because he loves The Child probably more than anyway. It's his movie.
That's so funny. I didn't.
The first time I saw it was at his house at a Halloween party with no sound, just like him playing music for it, and I was like, this movie is insane. And like he
Right.
sat down on the ground and really was an evangelist for me. He's like, Sam, you have to go back and watch it again. He's like, and he
Right.
started telling me like all the parts of it and selling me on it. And like I love when people do that. Like I love I hate when people sell me new stuff. They're like, oh, you have to see, and it's like, no. But when someone like really cares about a movie, like that feeling is really great.
Yeah, no, it's super important, especially today. I'm going to tell this to students because, like, when we grew up, it's a very limited field. I mean, pretty much we all watched the same thing because this was all the stuff that was basically airing on syndicated television, and it was a very small number of stuff. I mean, it was a lot of classic Hollywood and it was also the genre stuff was very specific, and we all saw gargoyles, and we all, everybody saw the same thing. And now the universe is so wide, and there's just so much that unless you have somebody sitting you down saying you must see this thing, this is like important, they're never going to find it. There's just too much content that's really like it's too much. I don't know how anybody. So it's really that kind of shepherding someone or guiding someone to a particular film of the past is more important now than ever because there's so much. And by the way, that's another reason why I sort of did the Sinister Cinema thing, because I really do empathize with the volume of movies that people really don't even never heard of. I mean, and the old expression, I think I mentioned this to you, Bill, is that like people sweat blood to make the worst movie you ever saw. It's like people broke their back to make usually something that you never heard of. And I felt like if I could just in this very short documentary present just a taste of this stuff, just so you would go, holy cow, I never even knew this. That looks cool. Whatever this is, I think is important because so much stuff is lost just because people don't know about it. It's there, but they'll never know about it unless somebody says, hey,
Sometimes there's a time limit too. Like there are movies that are lost and maybe they're going to stay lost. They might be in somebody's basement, but they're degrading. Like there's a shelf life for any kind of VHS even degrades. So there is sort of a time limit to be able to rescue certain films. And I cringe when I think about the things that are lost forever.
Yeah.
Like, London After Midnight is the first one that everybody talks about, even though, people who have actually seen London After Midnight are like, you know what? It's
Not that
better.
great.
Yeah. It's better in your mind than
That's
the
right.
actual film because
which is sort of what we were talking about. It's
Yeah.
That actually came out when I was talking to Greg, when I was interviewing him for the Sinister Cinema documentary, because that came out, the idea of London After Midnight. He said, oh yeah, I remember a friend of mine actually saw it, and he told, it's like someone who's seen, the day the crown cried.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's the one.
Like, I'll tell you that it, and it's so interesting that it can't possibly live up to what we imagine it would be.
There's certain movies that have though, because like The Astrologer was a movie for years I was hunting for, the kind of lost 75 movie, and when I finally saw it, I was like, this is almost better than I had hoped. Like, cause it's so weird.
Right.
And like, but like, yeah, and The Farmer was another one. Like I was dying to see The Farmer for the longest time. And I guess it kind of in a weird way lives up to it, but Laser Blast did not, as much as I do like it. Like, Starlog sold it like this is going to be the next Star Wars.
Oh, movie. I know. I mean, those Dave Allen aliens were like,
they're amazing. Yeah.
I enjoy watching the MST Laser Blast. Actually,
Yeah.
To me, that's like kind of the best way to watch that.
And
movie.
The other one, all the Mike Jitlov movies were always talked up, like Wizard of Speed and Time.
All right.
I finally saw them. I know it was easy to find them now, but like this year, they did live up to but that was in Starlog every issue. And,
oh yeah,
they were selling them for what, like $75 on a Super
That's right. He was one of the first people I met when I came to Hollywood. When I was first starting in LA, the first feature I did was this movie, America's Deadliest Home Video. Mm-hmm. And the guy that produced that happened to be friends with Mike Jitloff. And he said, oh, you should come over and meet Mike. And I went over to Mike Jitloff's house where he was, he had just finished, Wizard of Speed and Time. Well, a real interesting character, that guy.
You can't shake hands with him. I know
that's right. That was
psychic.
my first thing. I was like, I put my hand out, and he didn't. And
oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he won't. He won't shake hands.
He has like the dead zone thing, like that he can see everything about you if he touches.
I always remember it's the only time in my entire life where I put my hand out and someone wouldn't shake. I mean, it wasn't personal. It's just but yeah,
I thought that was just for the movie, and I talked to someone like, no, that's him. Like
that's absolutely him.
That's absolutely him. That movie's great though, but it's like these things, like when you would see them either in Warren magazines or, in Starlog and be like, send $75. I'm like, God, that was a lot of raking
That's
yards.
a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yes.
For a preteen kid, like that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. Well, people forget that. I mean, I remember like, the prices for a store bought, the early, tapes, it was like $100,
Oh yeah.
That price break, that happened in the middle 80s when all of a sudden, you could buy a VHS for $20 was like, that suddenly became the sell through idea. That was huge.
Well, the public
that's when I
domain
started
ones too. Like I remember when we could buy Night of the Living Dead for $10, even though we didn't know what public domain was.
Right.
And the fact that we could have that's a huge movie in anywhere, but also in Pittsburgh. It's a bit, but like to know that we could own that was like, wow. And I remember just looking at that one tape that we owned and being like, that and H.G. Wells' Things to Come, the 30s one. Those were the two public domain ones that were easy to find. And it was like, wow, like we have these.
Yeah.
The first one I ever bought was Nosferatu.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah, it was one of those generic brown boxes. I forget what series that was, but it was a clamshell box, and I had never seen it. And that was a magic moment putting that on for the first time. I'd read so much about it as a monster kid.
Yes.
That was a movie you were never going to see on TV. So I was just an electric moment. And I still love it. I got to see it in a theater at one point, and I don't know if you've ever if you ever get the chance to see it in a theater, go. It's an amazing experience.
Yeah, never seen it projected. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So that said, we should get to our first feature for the night, Grizzly, a stunning William Girdler film from 1976. We've talked so much about it. I hope those of you in the chat who haven't seen it, are there any Grizzly virgins out there tonight? Send us a quick message before we go to the first break. And we hope that there's at least one or two people that are going to be watching this movie for the first time.
I wish I was seeing it for the first time. I always
say
but
it has a sweep, that it shouldn't have. It has a sweep that's it's actually kind of rousing. It's good.
I was really straight edge when I was growing up, and I didn't drink and I didn't smoke pot until I was like in my early 30s. Then I discovered watching a movie stoned, and I was like, it's like watching it for the first time again. It's a brand new experience. There's like shit that I didn't even think about the first time I saw Alien, and then I watched it stoned, and I was like, this is really weird. They're like months from home. There's nothing out here. It's like in the middle of nowhere in fucking outer space, and there's a monster there. So it's great.
Cool.
Do drugs, kids.
Yes, right.
And we hope you do some before you watch Grizzly, or don't, whatever. Anyway, Jack Perez, we'll be back for segment number 2, right?
Yes, I'm coming back.
All right. We hope you'll all be back as well. We'll have lots more to say. In the meantime, enjoy Grizzly.
Possible, Doctor. Is that your science?
As you seek the world to change, shades of your mind stay the same. You are doomed to live in pain. Your suffering is my gain. Evil does not die, it waits to be reborn. He who kills becomes the killer. He who steals becomes the thief. No absolution from your savior. You'll find no solace in belief. Evil does not die, it waits to be reborn. Embrace the darkness, embrace the pain, and embrace the horror. Your suffering is my gain. Embrace the horror. Your suffering is my gain. My empire, my power, my truth. You may true, I will never lose. I am reborn. He who kills becomes the killer. He who steals becomes the thief. No absolution from your savior. You'll find no solace in belief. Evil does not die, it waits to be reborn. Embrace the darkness, embrace the pain, embrace the horror. Your suffering is my gain. My empire, my power, my truth. You may try, but I will never lose. I am
That trailer really reminded me of how batshit crazy the Manitou is. And
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch it again.
How can you top a movie? How can you top a movie where a grizzly gets shot with a bazooka? We're going to try. I think the Manitou does. I think the Manitou goes for it. As you can see from that trailer, that starfield that they walk out into gets me excited every time. I'm like, oh.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, you know, the first film I was taken to at a movie theater was 2001. I was 3.
Oh wow!
Obviously nothing. I mean, I was probably, you know, I was like Care Delay at the end by the time I just like, but the ending of the Manitou goes over the. I mean, it just goes there. It says, okay, whatever you've seen for the last 90 minutes, now we're gonna go beyond the infinite.
Yeah,
you know, in our own batshit way. Yeah, totally.
It's like going to the Spencer's in the 70s. It's blacklight posters and beaded curtains.
Yeah,
that's what I love. I brought out Erica's book, The Sweetest Taboo, which is about child kills in cinema. And there's actually a quick glance at Grizzly. saved by a throwaway line. And she wrote, and William Girdler was Grizzly, a young boy severely mauled, but the park ranger lets everyone know later that the boy will be just fine.
Right.
And barely audible dialogue. So in case you're wondering if he's okay, he was saved by a throwaway line.
That's good to know. Well, then Bill, in the novelization, then he perishes, right? According to the book takes it the other way, right? He doesn't survive in the book.
Oh yeah, he dies in the book. They kept it
Right.
real in the novel.
Right, because when your arm comes off and you're 7, that's basically the end of it, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty scary scene, I have to admit. Even though it's a little silly too. The peril that you feel for him is real, especially when he sets up that great fake out moment where he runs out to get the bunny.
Right.
Not only is there a cute kid, there's a cute bunny in the scene. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and you can't have a mom. I
And
mean, a
you're like,
mom
"Oh,
watching their child be mauled is probably one of the worst things. Although I have to say, the tent
Yeah.
tent murder
Oh,
is,
yeah.
is pretty gnarly. It's sort of, again, it's an abstraction because you don't really see the woman in the bear's mouth, but she apparently is being like swung from side to side somehow, either in its jaws or in its claws. Something's happening. It's like she's being held aloft. Something about that freaks me out.
Yeah, all she wanted to do was get pretty.
Yeah.
She was sitting in her tent camping, but she wanted to
You don't-
glamp instead of
Yeah,
camp.
you don't tent overnight. It's a bad.
I totally forgot to bring this up to you guys about this. I was looking back through my review of it, and years ago, I was telling my dad asked me what I was watching lately, and I said, "Oh, I just rewatched Grizzly." And when I was telling him about it, he goes, "Let me tell you a story about Grizzly." My parents went to like Salamanca Casino from Pittsburgh, which is like 3-hour drive, and for some reason, Grizzly was the VHS that was playing on the bus, and
wow.
my mom was like, I couldn't wait for that fucking movie to end. She's like, I just wanted it to end, and it was so horrible. And when she left the room, my dad's like, it was great. Like, they blew it up with a rocket. Like my dad was so happy about it. He was like, it was so good. So yeah. Also,
Right.
we didn't discuss it, but the Grizzly sequel probably should never be watched either.
Yeah, I
it's-
stayed away.
Yeah, I wanted to love it, even though it's wild that like Laura Dern, George Clooney, and Charlie Sheen are all in it.
Right.
Like they got him young. It was called Grizzly 2: The Concert, which that's a great name for it. It's like what? Sure.
Far out, man.
Yeah, far out. If you ever listened to Tarantino's podcast when he did the episodes where he interviewed Rick Dalton talked about being in Grizzly. So in the world of Tarantino, Andrew Prine is not in Grizzly. It's Rick Dalton,
Rick Dalton, right.
playing that role, which that makes sense. Like he was in a lot of William Girdler movies, according to the interview he did
How
with Rick
funny.
Dalton. Yeah, so I like that there's this like he also was in a bunch of movies for Canon too. He did 3 Fireman movies for Canon
Right.
and owe the rights to them. So
That's-
he fits into that world.
The one thing that really jumped out at me this time watching, and I hadn't actually seen it in a long time, but the music, the soundtrack it sounds like it's attempting to be something like grand and glorious, but instead it ends up being like very TV thriller, almost library music.
I didn't seem to mind it when I was a kid. I think I bought into the opening helicopter music
Yeah.
of it feeling
Oh,
bigger.
it's beautiful.
I think I just I think I choose to remember just the opening cue and the end cue, because I guess the end cue has that sort of like mournful harmonica, you know. It's
Yes.
Christopher George.
Nobody
Connelly,
won.
magnitude of rocket launching a bear and all his lost friends, and but yeah, I think his name is what's his name? Robert O. Raglan. I think he was a composer, and I think he also did Q. He did Q the Winged Serpent for Larry Cohen.
Oh wow!
And he also
That I like.
I'm pretty sure he also did Abby, which makes sense.
I would love to see a great looking version of Abby, but you know what? I'm happy with my orange colored one that I have. My copy is so beat up. I'm like, that's fine. This is probably how I should experience Abby.
Well, it's interesting. There's sort of a I've talked to a few people, definitely younger than us, about this, and we can certainly relate to it. Like the format and I don't want to say the resolution, but the quality of the print that you of your first viewing of whatever it is that you care about definitely factors into your memory of it and also how you re-experience it. And this is a dumb movie to compare, but this young woman was telling me that one of her movies when she was a kid, and it shows how young she was Speed. It was the Jan de Bont, Keanu Reeves Speed. So
Wow.
she was saying that when she chooses to watch Speed, rather than watch the 4K, cleaned up Speed, she'd rather pop in the VHS, 4:3, because that speaks to the memory and the impact and the feeling. If you show it in its proper aspect ratio, all cleaned up, it isn't the same fondness for the thing. And
I feel that same way. Werewolf versus Vampire Woman,
Mhm.
which fell into the public domain at some point. It was on every Mill Creek thing. And it was a really beat up looking version of the movie. It was reissued as Werewolf Shadow, its original title. It was all fixed
Mhm.
up and everything. But I was bummed out when I watched it. I was like, oh, this isn't what I remember. They totally had the real soundtrack as opposed to the library cues that are in
Right.
Werewolf versus Vampire Woman. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if the first time that's your memory, your mark is there in however you experienced it the first time.
Yeah,
So
like
we're-
the artifacts that other people, you know, you would consider, and certainly the filmmakers would prefer that you see it in the right aspect ratio and the right color timing and not a beat up, scratched print. But it's
Yeah.
weird how those things marry. You know, the obvious example of people going bananas over that is when someone like Lucas goes to the extreme of, you know, completely
Oh.
changing and removing and all that kind of stuff. Where that's the whole you've raped my childhood kind of stuff. So that outcry
Yeah.
comes out. But yeah, no, I think it's an interesting thing. Like, you know, we were talking, I think, earlier about Night of the Living Dead, and you know, my first experience with that is easily a 16 millimeter print on a small black and white TV with bad reception, and even that bad reception, like I watched the Criterion, you know, possibly the best version you can get a couple of years ago, and I sort of miss the noisy version. You know, it's just it just it feels more right. So
It's the
not as
word.
good of a movie, but like Fulci City of the Living Dead, I saw on a battered VHS the first time I saw it, and it worked better for me as that than the 4K I had because it covered up some of the cheapness of the effects. And
Right.
it covered up the fog actually mixed into the fog of the
Right.
of the second or third gen VHS, and I was like, oh, this movie feels like this like artifact versus now it's like so clean. I can see some of the strings and some of the stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like a facelift. Yeah, it's like you remove. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think you're right. And also perhaps even there's a certain danger
Mhm.
that is there in the dirtiness in the artifacts. That if when you take that away, it's like you've sanitized it somehow. You shined it up too much. It's not as savage anymore. It's not as dangerous.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I first saw it, I know it's not the best movie, but like Manos, the Hands of Fate, like the thing that I liked about it that was so scary about it to me, if anything is scary, is like that it feels like it's taking place in this world of darkness where you can't see anything else.
Excuse me. Yes. Yeah.
Around this world. And on the reissued Blu-ray, but you can see the lights of the city. And I'm like, oh, there's actually people around this. And it kind of took away some of the power of like, what is this strange universe that they've built for Torgo and these characters? So it kind of like, I like it. It's neat to see it cleaned up. Yeah, sometimes, like you said, I like it a little more dangerous and a little scuzzy. Like I don't mind when a print's beat up sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think it's also if you're born back when we were watching stuff on TV and they were, the TV. You're used to commercials being in stuff, and you're used to however you could see things. You're a little more forgiving than today. Kids are like, well, what's the best possible quality one that I can see?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right.
Sometimes it helps though. Like there was on TV, I first saw Lamora, which was under the title Lady Dracula on TV. It was one of those WOR screenings, really late, like in the middle of the night. And I'm watching it, and there's this, Richard Blackburn sets up that amazing chase sequence through the old burned out barn, and she's being chased in the dark by all these vampire people. But you really couldn't see what was happening on TV, and it frustrated me. And then when I saw the fixed up DVD version, I was like, wow, this is a beautifully orchestrated scene.
Yeah,
so
I
it
mean,
helps sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think it just, I guess it depends on the movie. I mean, as a filmmaker, I really appreciated actually the move. Now there's a whole sort of fandom around watching films projected in the original 35 millimeter. But for me, there was always the problem of, of the prints being not properly masked and basically suddenly a green line, scratch going through the whole thing. And with repeat viewings, the prints get more damaged, and then the real changes start to, get messed up, and it's a whole thing. And so when finally digital projection sort of reached its technical peak, I was so happy that at least I didn't have to worry about that anymore. And it's so interesting how sort of the pendulum swings the other way. But now that we're so used to an absolutely pristine image, that there's actually a need to see something that isn't quite as perfect if you can, something that's actually where the image is going to fluctuate in the gate, like that's all the things that you struggle to remove, as a filmmaker are now things that are like somehow welcome or wanted.
I like having a choice. Like some distributors were including a grindhouse style print on the Blu-ray releases where you could watch it with all the scratches and everything
Right.
before the restoration. I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. As long as it's, I mean, so what is interesting is I see people, particularly students, using different programs and apps to incorporate artifacts into clean
I
stuff.
do it
Like,
for the stuff I make for the show.
yeah, and it's so funny because again, this was something that I was like, wetgate printing and all these things where you're just trying to remove dust and every conceivable thing that you can do to get it to be as good looking as possible, and no distractions. And now there are entire programs where you can just like pour, you can just spread this stuff all over a completely, a pristine image, and it's so interesting. It's so interesting. But I get that with certain grindhouse movies because that was part of the experience. I mean, watching those movies on 42nd Street when I was a kid, and I would muster the courage to go in those places and watch films like that. They were always, brand new. They were messed up, So I didn't understand what they were supposed to look like. They were already like all that stuff was baked in, into the look already. Just bad projection and scratches and everything else.
Bill, Becca said in the comments, I forgot to tell you, earlier today when we were in Target, I don't know what music they were playing, but it literally sounded like an Italian film score. It was like, I've never been in public and had music drop out like this, where it was literally like a weird, like Goblin-esque score, and people were just walking around going, what is this music? And I loved it was like my own personal horror movie for a little bit. It was totally wonderful. So I forgot to tell you
You're lucky. Something terrible and beautifully violent was happening in another part of the store, but it wasn't to you, so you're lucky.
Exactly, but it was like just literally like the beat dropped out, and it was just like like noises like that, and I was like, wow, like this is like being in Monroeville Mall and Goblin playing. It was really like an amazing experience, and it went on for a good 2.5 minutes. Like I'm used to the most innocuous music playing when you're shopping, and this was not it. This was like very abrasive.
Wow.
So it was a cool experience. I should have filmed it actually, but it was kind of like an analog experience. Like I'm just going to take this in for me. And tell everybody about it later.
Very cool.
Yeah. These things rarely happen. But hey, at least we did have 2 grizzlies attack. Like I said before, the one of the malls that nobody goes to, 2 black bears got into Sears, and within a week, I think the first one told the other one like, hey, the humans are letting us into the mall.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No one else is in this mall. It opened and turned into a dead mall almost immediately. Pittsburgh Mills. And then, for a long time, it was like, here's the black bear.
My sister worked there when that happened.
Oh, did she? Oh, wow.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
Imagine like that you go out to your car to leave for the night and you're under threat of attack from a grizzly.
Well, hopefully
the characters in this movie didn't see it coming either, especially those 2 campers at the beginning. That was really kind of brutal.
It is brutal. It is brutal.
That's the most disturbing, other than the little kid too. Is disturbing, but the 2 girls at the beginning I think is the scariest kill in the movie.
Especially now that we know that the kid was okay, that we have confirmation.
Yes,
the kid got
somehow.
Yeah,
he's not going to walk right for the rest of his life, but he's going to live.
Well, it's like the geek out, but like when they made the G.I. Joe cartoon movie, they made it after the Transformers one, and they killed Optimus Prime in that movie, and parents were very upset. So they planned to do the same thing with Duke. And Duke gets stabbed in the heart with like a spear and all this stuff. And then in the movie, they ADR in a line near the end, like, hey guys, guess what? Duke's okay. And it's someone off camera that says it. And everybody goes, yay. And it doesn't match the footage at all. Kids are like, oh, it looked like he died, like really violently. Yeah. Right. Everything's fine.
I also remember the woman in the waterfall being naked, but she's not.
No.
Yeah.
It's such a guy moment to put in a movie. Like that's the foreign investor moment, Bill, here, where it's like, could we see a beautiful blonde girl get partially naked under a waterfall? We'll give you $10,000 for the budget. And that's probably how that scene happened. But I'd like to think it's not as good as my favorite one. The Roger Corman one is the best in Galaxy of Terror, where it's like, we want to see this worm have sex with a woman.
Yeah. Pretty shameless.
Yeah. And he told her, he's like, the foreign investors want to see this scene. Do they? I would like to meet these lunatic oil sheiks or Japanese salarymen that are like, we have money and we'll spend it in Hollywood on purpose.
Yeah. All right. So our second feature of the evening, the Manitou.
Yeah. Wow. I did not see this when it came out. I did not see this until recently. I cannot believe that you saw this in the theater, and I can't imagine what that was like. Like just.
It was just, there was a time, I mean, I think when I finally realized I could get out of the house and go see movies and no one, when my parents weren't controlling that at all, and that I could get into, I mean, even though Manitou is PG, it was still the time when you were sneaking into R-rated movies, or I would go with a friend with a slightly deeper timbre in his voice, like try to get into stuff I couldn't. But I was also so open to seeing anything. Like it was almost like as long as it was, and it didn't even necessarily have to be horror, horror, sci-fi, or fantasy. I was seeing like, who was killing the great chefs of Europe, and somebody killed her husband, and like I just didn't care. I was
Who's killing her now?
Yeah,
Oh, I love
exactly.
that one.
I'll see whatever. And so the Manitou just looked weird.
Yeah.
And the poster art was sort of abstract. It wasn't as defined what this thing could be. Even though I don't know how they would define it. I mean, you can't really present here's a Native American medicine man who's going to be reborn in a tumor of a woman. Like what? But it just promised to be weird, and then it delivers, in spades, this weirdness, this progressive weirdness. What's so interesting is that, like, it's different from Grizzly. Like, William Girdler, like, is like in this movie is concentrating, at least at the beginning, on like character, like he's focusing on character, and scenes where people are just conversing and things like that. And it starts to, as a young person, I said, wow, this is like an adult movie. Like this is not, doesn't open with somebody getting ripped apart by a bear. This is like talking about medical stuff, and there seems to be something going on. And where it finally goes, is not to be believed. You just don't know. We can't possibly expect it to go where it's going to go. And I think, like I said, by the time the movie was over, I was just kind of like, my jaw was hanging open. It's like, what the fuck did I just watch? Which
That's
is
what
great.
I like so much about it. It also feels very late 70s, where there's like this last gasp of people pre-satanic panic, of people being into like the occult, and also like there was like a big Native American art influence. Like everybody had those God's eyes in their room.
That's
like,
right.
Do you want to make this like? So it really feels like very 1978.
Yeah.
Well, you're right. I'm glad you brought that up, because there is sort of almost like a subgenre of Native American influence or thematic horror. Like there's another movie of the period called Shadow of the Hawk.
Oh yeah.
With Jan Michael Vincent, which I always remember. And then you even feel it in stuff like Nightwing.
Nightwing is my other example.
And even later in Wolfen, Michael Wadley's movie with Albert Finney. So there's this like thing where Native American mysticism and black magic and all that is like starting to find its way. And you're right, it was like in the air in the 70s anyway. Culturally into horror. And it's definitely, here it's like the prime focus. I mean, that's forget the devil. It's this, this witch doc, this medicine man.
And it's cool because it's like something that's so close to us because it's in our country, yet it feels foreign. This like, this other religion and these spirits that exist back before, BC. And it's like, I find that really fascinating in this.
Yeah, this ancient, but it's weird. It's different from the, again, possession films and devil films of the period. Somehow the devil is just, even if you're not religious, is just, it's more of an abstraction of evil and an ultimate evil, as opposed to this like defined cultural, specific, physical thing. And even the opening credits you'll see of the Manitou is just, it's dominated by, Native American masks and art, and all that is just part of the, part of the whole setup is that. Into that though, Bill, as you were saying, are these sort of like, where's Waldo? Like, what's wrong with this picture? Kind of thing, like Tony Curtis, right? Where Tony Curtis is like the last person that you expect to be in this. I mean, he's weird. Tony Curtis is a weirdo, so in that way it makes sense. But it's certainly like, what is Tony Curtis? Like, I believe Burgess.
Yeah, but there's something very like heavy about him. He's like a big star.
Yes, no, that's what I mean. I mean, well, there is something substantive, but at that point, I think in his career, he's almost. I don't want to say he's clowning, but he's not the Tony Curtis of he's not the Tony Curtis of Spartacus or Houdini or any of the late 60s kind of stuff. He's a different Tony Curtis. He's kind of he's nothing. I mean, if he's nothing if not enjoyable to watch. I mean, you just love watching the guy. No, I was going to say that there is a very specific, what became body horror that I feel is like, this is an early sort of, dive into that, in a very extreme way. I mean, like, as you'll see when you watch the movie, this all starts with and I don't know, it's kind of weird because Susan Strasberg, who's the lead, kind of, she has a tumor, and it's not a small tumor. I mean, but from the very beginning, she's kind of like, yeah, this happened like 2 days ago. I don't know. It seems fine. And it's like the size of a it's the size of a baseball that has appeared in just 2 days. So automatically, this thing that the doctors examine and they're alarmed by it, is kind of extreme. And the fact that this is the source or the nest, from which this evil will be born is a really fucking bizarre concept, and it plays out. I mean, it's not like you don't hide it. I mean, this thing gets bigger, and it's a big, fleshy, stuff that Cronenberg would later, explore, in The Brood and stuff like that. All that stuff is sort of at play here.
Well, that scene where they're all kind of doing the seance around the table, and it starts to come out in the middle of the table where you see its face is really a great shot too. Like, there's definitely some like Bava-esque lighting, a few points where that green lighting comes up. Like, there's some really neat influences in this. The movie looks really cool. And I think the really interesting thing to me is, like, I know that, yes, you could say that it's a Exorcist ripoff a little bit, but not really. It's its own thing.
No, it's its own
of
thing.
all his movies, this feels like the most of its own thing.
I agree. I mean, it was a novel. It was a novel, right? It was a novel first. And
that's right. I forgot about that.
There's like 5 sequel novels too, which is crazy. Like Graham Masterson wrote a lot of other, stories of the Manitou. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, he wrote Revenge of the Manitou, Burial, Manitou Blood, Blind Panic, Plague of the Manitou, and a short story called Spirit Jump, which is
fascinating.
Chris Meredith in this too, who his career was kind of like, these are the movies he was in at this point too. He was in The Devil's Reign, very close to this as well. Like, he's until Rocky. Like, Rocky's kind of like his renaissance of like, oh, I don't have to be in these these movies anymore.
Right. But I do feel, like you said, it's like it's its own thing, and I also feel like it's pretty daring because it's sort of like it doesn't, whereas Grizzly is definitely like, it has these very strict sort of genre parameters. This is this type of movie with this type of creature or monster with the, it's basically, I don't want to say it's boilerplate, but it's a very narrow lane.
Yeah.
And Manitou is like just goes off in its own. It's literally on its own planet, and it touches all kinds of things, like you said. That the influences are really expressionistic and psychedelic, and they seem to be pulling from all kinds of areas, and sort of like just fearless, and like, because you could have done something much more suggestive for this ending. It could have been, you could have got Val Lewton to this kind of stuff. Where it was all played in sort of abstract shadows and light, and it could have been much more artful in that way. And that's what I appreciated about Girdler, even what he did with Grizzly. He's like, no, I'm going to, even if I don't have all the money I need, I'm reaching for this, like, this scale, and I'm going to do it whether I really have the resources or not. So in many ways, you'll see these effect shots that certainly by today's standards are cartoonish.
Yeah.
But I don't remember in '78 being, again, this is after Star Wars, so I'd seen the state of the art already. I wasn't laughing, when this stuff happens, because it's almost like if the filmmakers believe it that strongly, then I'll roll with it. You know what I mean? Like, they're committed to this. They're not making fun of it. They're saying this is happening, so I'm going with it.
That's what I like about it.
Like, kind of corny, but it wasn't totally unbelievable.
Right.
I hate when people say it looks fake, and it's like, well, it is.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, look. I mean, what's so interesting is that a lot of people have said this. I mean, the shark in Jaws is painful. Bruce is painfully fake. It's broad daylight. It's clearly not a real shark. Yet the characterizations and the characters are so strong and so they are so believable that it doesn't destroy the movie. You forgive it. You buy in. You choose to buy in. And I'm not saying that the script or the acting in Manitou is of that caliber, but there is something to be said about, like, a filmmaker. I think we were talking about this earlier. Not poking fun at what they're doing, but absolutely committing to the reality of the thing, even if they don't have the resources to make it photorealistic or absolutely believable objectively. It's almost like, okay, that's and there's shit in Alfred Hitchcock. I mean, there are certain matte paintings. I mean, look at Marnie. I mean, Marnie has some matte paintings. They're like, like, wow, this is like painfully artificial that I'm supposed to believe is. So, yeah, I think it depends on your own personal taste whether you're willing to, go with it or not. But
and also when you're born, I think, like you said, if you're an older viewer watching this, you're like, this is what we accepted that this would look like when we saw it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I kind of ran into that when I did Monster Island. Even though it was a a monster comedy, which was one of the reasons why MTV was, okay with me using stop motion animation, because there was this comedy component, so it wasn't meant to be taken deadly seriously or anything like that by any stretch. But it was funny. The movie really was made for our audience here, and most of the people who saw it at the time were MTV kids. And I got a lot of that. Oh, that looks fake. And it's like, well, stop motion animation isn't supposed to be photorealistic. It's the opposite of that, and it's supposed to be enjoyed because of its artifice. That's the thing. And so it definitely depends on how you were raised and what movies you saw.
That happens with people watch old Godzilla movies now. Like as a kid, people are like, these movies are cheap and they're guys in suits. I'm like, okay. Like,
yeah,
I loved them. Like it didn't change that I loved them.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting for people who haven't seen the Manitou what their reaction is, to this, because it is weird in a great way, And again, like with Girdler, it's not like, well, you brought up Manos. Like Manos is genuinely like there's genuine incompetence. There are filmmakers, or there are people who say they're filmmakers who literally have no understanding of how the medium works and how you put scenes together and stuff, and that's apparent in certain films like Manos and so forth. You never get that in Girdler. I mean, you always get the sense that this guy knows what he's doing. He's a showman like William Castle, or even Roger Corman, but I think he's a better filmmaker than both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been interesting to find out what happened, what kind of films he would have made if he hadn't.
He was 30 when he died, wasn't
he?
Yeah, especially coming after this movie, which I feel like is his, like you said, like this is his like whole cloth making his own movie, and like I would have liked to have seen like what would come after this and where would he take it.
Yeah, because I mean, he started, a lot of filmmakers, even those that became legitimate, certainly started making low budget, genre stuff for Corman, and or other places. He was going somewhere, and I'm not sure where, but it was interesting. It was totally interesting. Certainly, the output. There was he made a lot of films in a very short period of time. I think I mentioned to you, Bill, a couple of times. There's a friend of mine, Ian Cooper. For those people who are interested, the only book that seems to be out there on William Girdler is a book called Kentucky Wild, which a friend of mine named Ian Cooper wrote. He's a great historian. He wrote I think one of the best just books on cinema ever was his sort of treatise on Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. A whole, and this is like he decides to just go do his biography of Girdler. It's fascinating, but yeah, he's definitely a real filmmaker.
Yeah,
it's not.
It's so funny because my first time discovering Bring the Head of Alfredo Garcia was in the Golden Turkey Awards book, and I read like the Medveds shredding it, and then like when I finally saw it, I was like, this movie is amazing. Like what?
No, that's and for me, obviously, I mean that movie was like a huge influence, and my own film with Cucaracha, a lot of the atmosphere of that movie comes from Peckinpah and specifically Garcia. But that's like the definite. Again, Alfredo Garcia is like somebody making like that's an intensely personal movie.
Yeah.
Basically in an exploitation format. That is like a fever dream, and you either get it or you don't. You either get it or you don't.
I just remember reading that book as a kid and being like, they made the movie sound like this, like it is downbeat. I get that, but like just this like joyless like slog through a movie. And when I watched it, I'm like, this is one of the most exciting movies I've ever seen.
Oh, it's the opposite, really.
Yeah.
Despite its subject matter, it's actually a very alive, it's a very alive movie. It's the opposite of a downer.
I think the Medved's got some bad weed.
Well, I think the Medveds are very, like, a lot of times it's just them. Like almost every movie in that book, with the exception of Dondi, which I can say is a bad movie, but like, Zabriskie Point's another one where they like shred and like, I'm like, I really liked it. Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, you can't, like going back to the reviews thing, like for example, when I did this film, La Cucaracha, a couple of critics, like Roger Ebert, who happened to be a fan of Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, gave me a very, very nice review, and so that was like awesome. And then there was another critic, John Pattison, who wrote for the LA Weekly, that gave a glowing review, and I was like, okay, so like people pretty much like this. I'm glad that'll help me in my career. And then Kevin Thomas, of the LA Times wrote a review like I had come over and cut off his grandmother's head. I mean, it was the most. I mean, it was like people literally came up to me and said, "What did you do to Kevin Thomas?" I mean, it was, and it's like it was almost like he couldn't have possibly have seen the same movie or talk about bad weed or bad mood or whatever the fuck. You know, it's almost like when you see a judge. Like I've seen. I don't know if you ever sit on any trials. I've seen a judge go through the docket. And if he comes, you can tell, like, if suddenly he's got a bad phone call or something, the way he happens to be treating whatever case is in front of him is completely affected by his mood. You know, here's somebody's destiny being affected by, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel like critics are just, you know, either they don't like, you know, for whatever reason, they're just like, oh, this, you know, touches a nerve. I hate it, you know, and they just happen to have the power to tell others this. But yeah, it's you never know why somebody's going to like love or hate anything.
It's so hard to get a project like that through the gate, and then you put it out there, and somebody writes something like that about it. Like, what does that feel like?
Oh, it's horrible. It's so it's horrible. And again, it's kind of sort of like, but it's your own fault in a way. Like if you're going to take the joy in somebody saying I love your movie, then in a way you're sort of asking for it if you can't take somebody's hating it. But you're right. It's like it shows a certain like somebody saying I don't like it for these reasons, an illiterate sort of criticism, but an outright, it's almost like what's equivalent to a social media attack where someone's just pouring hate over something is horrible because you have spent a lot of time and risked a lot, and you put a lot of yourself into something, and then somebody just decides on a whim, like, you know, fuck you, I think this is shit. Yeah, it's painful, but it's nothing you can control. You know, it's like that's a big part. I say this all the time. It's like it was no accident that I chose directing because I want a certain measure of control. I need control. The funny thing is that at every stage in filmmaking, particularly if you work in Hollywood, control is constantly being taken away from you at every step of the way. You know, whether it's, you know, somebody telling you to change your script or cut days out of your schedule or cast this person or change this music or whatever, you know, or down to the poster and everything else. It's like, so it's a funny thing that you have to reconcile, and reviews are the same thing, you know, or even distribution for that matter. If you make an independent film, like where's it going to turn up, you know, like who's going to release it, or is it going to get released? You know, those things are things that you can't necessarily control. That's hard for a control freak to
there's a lot of compromises that you're making along the way, and then to have someone that doesn't know this whole story write stuff. I always think about that when I write about movies. I'm like, I'm spending 2 or 3 hours writing about this. This was like a year to 2 years or more of somebody's life, and multiple lives, like an entire crew and all these things that happen. And it's like, it's a miracle that any movie gets made, much less. And it's like, so I always feel like that's why I never think of what I do. Like Bill said, we don't think of like what we do as reviews. It's like we're like talking about movies or writing about them versus like straight up review.
That's why I appreciate what you guys do. And also, you know, it's the same spirit of like what was behind the Sinister Cinema documentary was like, you know, maybe these movies, so many of these, I mean, again, like Greg has like 4,000 movies in the catalog, and maybe there are a handful of ones that are like really memorable and watchable all the way through. And most of them are not, but all of them have something that's worthwhile, you know. And to your point, like movies are so difficult to get to work, no matter how much thought is poured into it, that if a movie has something, then isn't it better to just talk about that thing that's valuable than to spend all your time just ripping on what it isn't or what, you know? I think it's very kind, and it's a better approach to just kind of go, you know, this part's actually cool. You know?
I think about that a lot. Especially, like Girdler's a good example of like, we always talk about that. We sometimes like the movies that are ripoffs as much, if not sometimes more, than the movies that they're remake, because it's like to find art within a carbon copy and to find your own story and to do something. It's really interesting, I think. And like, I like seeing like, well, where would, and also it gives you like a weird, see, like you talked earlier about the 3 years between Star Wars movies felt like eternity, but then we got stuff like Battle Beyond the Stars and Star Crash is a good example too. Like where those movies were as exciting to me as Star Wars.
Star Crash is still something I think about, you know. Just, you know, again, and Star Crash is another one of those things where it's like, you definitely don't have the budget, but there's no shortage of ideas. like the ideas are just pouring out in that thing.
Cozy never
The
even saw
Christmas
Star
lights in
Wars.
space are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christmas lights in space. Right?
He obviously hadn't seen Star Wars, but he had seen Flash Gordon. And so he was like, that's what I want to do. I want to do a Flash Gordon movie. And it works.
Yeah, it totally works. Yeah, well, I think that you're right. It's interesting. It's an interesting idea about like what comes out of restriction. Like in many ways, what the French discovered in basically in the 60s and started writing about the auteur theory were mostly contract Hollywood directors who worked for the studios in the 30s, 40s, and 50s who really had little choice over the material, but yet their signature was on these movies, irrespective of what genre or what they were handed, which I think is an interesting idea that can, and I think it's just, unless you're a robot, a director, a filmmaker is going to find a way to insinuate. They have to, in a way, in order to direct anything, you have to kind of get in there and find your place in it somehow. And and so even in the stuff like you mentioned, the child, even though that was like a served up like make this, and to great degree, Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus was the same way. It was like I didn't come up with that idea, but when I was asked to do it, I was able to pull in all my childhood love of every Godzilla movie I'd ever seen, and I was able to use that in a way that I thought, that becomes an ingredient, whether it transcends its limitations is for somebody else to say, but at least that's what I was bringing to it. It wasn't just like me knocking out a porno, or something like that. It's like, who's to say? Maybe there's personal porn. I would imagine there's certain filmmakers. I think that.
All
but
personal.
like it's like we're pushing a rock up a hill, but like it's trying to find the love in it if you can, and that's a very hard thing to figure out. And like some people never figure it out, but if you can bring something yourself to it, that's what I love. Like you said, especially about the auteur theory of the 40s and 50s contract directors, like you can tell what movies are theirs. And like even like you mentioned Val Lewton earlier, the movies that he produced definitely are in his world. And and it's like, and they're very low budget movies and they're for a smaller studio. And like we were talking last week about the sequel to Cat People is incredible. Like it's a really great movie. If it had a different title, people would talk about it as, one of the greatest movies ever. And it's like, that's what I love, that like these things can come out of commerce.
Well, they're absolutely, and come out of, and I think that's the hopeful thing for also young filmmakers and people who don't have any money to make something, that it's the classic that necessity is the mother of invention thing. It is true. There's a certain energy, tension, whatever, that comes out of not having just money to throw at it, that creates all these very interesting choices that make these movies richer, and that have been better than if they had money to solve them. Money isn't the best, isn't the best fuel for creativity necessarily.
That's why I love low budget movies. That's the entire reason right there, is because they have a certain aspect that's usually missing anyway. Like some people obviously know how to spend $300 million, but most of those movies end up being like big and they're temporarily pleasing, but there's nothing really that you keep with them after that. And whereas these low budget movies, as we've said a couple of times tonight, they stick with you and you can't get rid of them.
I find the more inspired creative choices seem to come out of limitations, and then because they're inspired, they're memorable, because every director wants. I've always wanted more days and more time because I want to just finesse the thing if I can, and that's what time gives you. But if you don't, then you just have to find another way of, bringing it out. And and the Manitou is one of those things where it's like, he could have looked at his budget. He would have known at this point to say, I don't think we can do this finale the way I see it. And it was almost like, he was like, fuck it, let's just do it anyway, because the idea is maybe bigger or better than the idea is more important than the execution in some ways. Like the concept of the thing is bigger than the execution. So,
it's almost like he's like, hey, you know what? This is what I could do. Can you go along with it and just imagine?
Exactly.
If we had this, like, this is what it would look like.
Right. Watch it with one hand over your eye. Do it like this. Right.
Can we talk about this bizarre double feature of the Manitou and Rabbit Test?
That I don't understand at all. That's insane. God. I mean, in a way, it sort of makes sense. It's like, here's two crazy movies together. Why not?
For Halloween.
Wow, that's weird. How does that? That's crazy. I guess they couldn't. I mean, Rabbit Test, remember, was weird even for the time when it came out. It was such a weird.
Yeah.
It was the fact that it was Joan Rivers and the fact it was just weird.
Oh, I love this tagline so much.
Me too. Yeah, and a lot of, like you said before, a lot of black, a lot of negative space in these ads.
This is like
There's
the
also-
Exorcist angle of the ad
Yes.
campaign.
Yes.
And also this is a big time for reincarnation talk in the late 70s. It was
Yes.
like a hot
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Audrey Rose.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I love the font for the Manitou too with the A in it. It's really, oh my god. The late great Planet Earth playing in a drive-in blows my mind, Bill. That's like
This
and
is a
Animal
big
House and the
idea to
Choir
get used
Boys
to.
is a crazy idea to get used to too.
I like Shock and Alice, Sweet Alice.
Oh my god.
Scalpel.
Scalpel and Manitou is
Scalpel.
a dream double feature for me. Oh my god. The Warriors are looking for Mr. Goodbar is like, these are two controversial movies that people don't want us to show. And for different reasons. Are people
Yeah.
gonna fight or
This is from Fort Lauderdale, and
Oh.
I could just look at these ads
Yeah.
for
Oh, yeah.
hours and hours.
Yeah.
Damnation
There's-
Alley and Magic?
I was just gonna
Nobody
say, yeah.
on the show. That's the only movie we've ever showed that people did not like. Damnation
What?
Alley. Damnation Alley.
Really? That's funny
Yeah.
because you know about the there was a prop car manufacturer that made movie cars in LA.
Yeah.
Their lot was on Ventura Boulevard, just as you come from Hollywood into the valley, into Studio City. And I used to work in this building. That's where I cut a few of my films. And the Damnation Alley mobile was parked in this lot off of Ventura Boulevard, just sitting there, and it was there for a good 10 years. And it was one of my favorite things, just to be able to drive by and see this huge vehicle, just sitting there. And I don't know where it wound up. And that the place closed and somebody must have bought it. It wound up somewhere.
Well, did you notice the most downer double feature of all those?
Oh wait, which one
Invasion
is
of the
it?
Body Snatchers in the end.
Yes.
Are those at the end? Like that is like very of this time.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Oh.
pretty-
I remember seeing Invasion of the Body Snatchers on HBO as a kid and being like, I can't believe this is the ending. Because I knew the original one so well. And then seeing it, I was like, especially like, Mr. Spock is bad and like all this stuff.
Yeah, right.
And then that dog
Yeah.
with the human head, like there's
Yeah.
so much at the end of it. It's just like nightmare fuel.
Brooke Adams turning into a pod was the
Oh,
most heartbreaking thing for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love it so much.
Well, that was the case. The Don Siegel version. That obviously he wanted to end it. With On Your Next, and
Yeah.
they made him shoot that ending. And actually, in retrospect, it you kind of like it helps in a way. Like you said, it's like okay, all right, so maybe not all is entirely lost. Not the same for the Philip Kaufman.
No.
Ooh, this is an
Look at
interesting
this.
ad. I've never seen this ad.
Yeah.
I've never seen this one. That's fascinating.
It's like a paperback cover with the way the faces come together on the bottom. I love
That's
that.
cool.
Yeah, I'm really into this one. There's
Yeah, I
almost
like
an inverted crucifix in the bottom
Yeah.
with those images, but
Yeah.
they chickened out and put a couple more in there.
Wow.
cool.
This
Yeah.
this says a lot about the movie to me too. Like it's got that like you said, the body horror aspect of it, of him like cutting through her. I really love this ad.
Yeah, it's a good ad. I've never seen that. That's cool.
Oh, this was a whole page. Oh, this is from Pittsburgh.
Oh.
Sorry, I can't zoom in on it. I don't think.
Message from
Space.
yeah, I was just good. Yeah. Speaking of Star Wars
Yeah.
ripoffs,
I know.
with Vic Morrow as Han
Yes.
Solo.
That's right.
This is a good double feature.
Phantasm and the
both these-
Manitou was like, the Avco Embassy
Yeah.
double, I guess.
This is a weed smoking double feature right here.
It sure is. Might even a little acid.
Yeah.
This is the one I remember. This is the ad
Yeah.
that I think I saw as a kid that drew me to it.
Susan Strasberg. I honestly believe that even just a little bit of Strasberg is enough to transform you inside forever.
Yes.
And Stella Stevens too.
Yes, and so.
Bill, this is my hometown drive-in.
Yes.
Oh,
Here's to you, Sam.
just
Panico.
seeing that logo makes me sad because now it's a racetrack. But man,
It also had a Native American mascot to it.
yes. And it said
I'll just
when you
leave
left,
that
it
there.
said "See you before many moons," and it had a totem pole on your way out. Free groceries on Wednesday if you go to the Wednesday show. They'll give you a whole bag of groceries for coming to see Phantasm. We should bring that back. That seems like something we could bring back in this market.
Yeah, for sure.
I have to make an Avco Embassy Pictures T-shirt. I don't have
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Did you?
Oh, here we go.
Oh yeah.
The Manitou is the second hit, and then you get a Young Frankenstein, which doesn't really go, but that's okay.
A little preview ad for the Manitou.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Did you find any of the ones that talk about Alien, Bill?
But we were
Yeah,
talking about body horror. It says in the Grizzly tradition of Alien.
even though it was made a year before. But you know what? We want you to rent it. So please rent it. Oh, this one, Bill.
Major studio sneak preview.
Oh,
this is an important film.
Tony Curtis will be there.
Right.
I like that they called out Super Panvision 70 on the bottom too.
That's
that
right.
might bring you in.
Oh, that's right. This was like the light show ending would have been really cool in 70
Now that's a weird triple feature. All right, so wait a minute. You got the White Buffalo, which actually does fit into our sort of our Native American sort of genre stuff of the period, certainly. But the fact that Peckinpah's Cross of Iron completes it.
I guess would you consider the White Buffalo horror? It's not a sort
well,
of.
I mean, again, it was sort of like that hat trick, Dino De Laurentiis hat trick. You know, it's Kong, Korka, and the White Buffalo. And, I certainly expected the White Buffalo to be like a full-on just monster movie set in the West, and it's has a very weird atmosphere. It has a very weird tone to it. Orca too, for that matter. I don't know. Like White Buffalo is sort of its own. It's like the Manitou. It's kind of on its own planet.
I like that Bronson has like steampunk goggles on.
Right.
Like
that's
it's such a strange.
Yeah.
Like it is very. Yeah, it is. That and Orca together would be a cool double feature.
That's definitely a weird. That's a weird monster movie double feature. For sure.
This is just stunning. This is a stunning night out in Louisville again. I'm pretty
Dusk
sure
to Dawn.
Yeah.
I want a foaming cup of vampire venom. If I dare. And that's what time is that at? Oh, it's at 1 p.m. What? Okay.
Extra bonus at 1 p.m.
Yeah, I guess I have to stay the whole way through. I gotta wait. Like they're like, you know what? Do you want your? I imagine foaming cup of vampire venom. Someone's gonna pee in it too. I feel like that.
Yeah,
that's like they're like, you guys stayed this long. Yeah.
Oh, here's a good one.
Oh, wow. Point of terror.
This is stunning.
Casey's shadow. With
the deep.
Yeah, with the deep.
Jacqueline Bissett in a wet T-shirt.
Yeah. Casey Shadow and the Deep is definitely, they don't go together.
Is Tales of Bizarre the Mummy movie?
The Mummy movie.
That's like 8 years after this came out, or 7 years after that came out.
And Tower of Evil is Horror of Snape Island.
Yeah.
Before they renamed it Beyond the Fog.
And Simon King of the Witches would be about 6 years old here too. That is, oh my God, that's awesome. I did finally watch the director of Bizarre's other movie, Horror Hospital, this week, Bill, and I loved it, as you can imagine.
You were texting me about it, yeah.
Oh, it was so good. Oh. Like it was literally like 15 minutes in it, and it was like hippies in a hospital, and all the bad guys had motorcycle helmets, and I was like, oh, this movie's great. This ad though.
Oh, that's cool. I haven't seen this.
Yeah. That's
wild.
the UK
From the
one.
UK run, yeah.
Spirit.
All over London from May 13th.
I like the hands holding the logo too.
Yeah, that's cool.
Through the fire, yeah.
It's advertised on radio and TV.
Wow.
Okay.
Very cool.
Let's do a commercial break in the drink segment. How about that, huh?
Let's do it. Huh?
Okay. How about that drink segment, huh?
Years ago, they drove it into the swamps. Legend says it's still there. Legend of the Bayou. Nowadays, most folks swear it never happened. A few have even bet their lives on it. Legend of the Bayou. Pray it isn't true. Legend of the Bayou. Rated R. No one under 17 admitted without parent.
Starts Friday at the Aurora Cinema.
Don't you just hate the holidays? A couple of weeks of partying and you feel like a real flint. Even your ankles got fat. It's enough to make you want to give up. But that's when you gotta get.
Join Jack LaLanne now while you can still get 1985 rates.
When the going gets tough, the tough will come.
We will return after these messages.
We don't know anything for a fact. Clint Walker. Except that bulldozer kills.
Carl Betts. 2 men dead. The survivors watch an unmanned bulldozer continue its rampage. Killdozer.
Now that my Melissa's drinking more, she needs something that will really help keep her dry.
And when it comes to dry, I use nothing but Johnson's disposable diapers. The diaper with pulling action. Johnson's has 2 layers of padding. Special pulling action absorbs irritating wetness into the bottom layer, away from baby's tender skin. Let the diaper with pulling action help keep your baby nice and dry. Only from Johnson & Johnson.
What can we say about our second movie? The Ms. Quamacus is the drink for it.
What does that mean?
It's the name of the Native American entity that comes out of a girl's shoulder. That Tony Curtis has to stop it. Can he? Can modern medicine and a medicine man stop Ms. Quamacus? Probably saying it wrong. Definitely saying it wrong. All I know is how to make drinks. Here's what we got. This one's got 4 ounces of watermelon juice. Almost going bad, but it's still got a couple days, so I'm going to drink it. We got the Espolón tequila. We got the, how much we got of that? 1.5 ounces. Half an ounce triple sec. Half an ounce lime juice. Should we have used the bear honey for the Grizzly drink? Yeah, probably would have worked better. But we're going to use it in this drink. Here we go. Let's put it all in to a shaker. And then you're going to do the lime at the end. Not the lime, the honey. Thank you, baby. Thank you, honey.
You're welcome.
Honey, baby. Thank you.
Honey bear.
Sweetie, darling. Thank you. Honey bear, that's where you take your pepper and do it in the parking lot. There we go.
People around us probably think your name is really baby, because I never call you Sam.
That's what my name is in your phone.
I just say baby.
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 Baby. Baby.
Just like a mother, you know, if you're in trouble.
Strangers in the
Let me say
night, making bear drinks, hold each other tight. Look at that. Looks like we're going to Starbucks twice.
Maybe you could get a 3rd job there.
Good.
A barista.
Yeah. What are your 3 jobs? Writer,
Or you can
and
drink
hand.
that.
What?
You can drink that.
Pazuzu. Let's see what this is all about. As we go deep into the 70s. It's wonderful. This is great. I would recommend this drink. I wish I'd made it for the drive-in, but I made it now, so that's it. You ruined it. You had something great, and you ruined it. Anyways, this is a great drink. I'm very much looking forward to watching this movie. I'll talk to y'all in a bit. Pazuzu.
That looks tasty.
Thank you. I love this lady floating scene, by
Yes,
the way.
as a kid, this is the most, for me, was the most disturbing thing. I mean, obviously I didn't know what was coming, but as the movie
Yeah.
rolls along, when this old woman suddenly starts screaming "Pana" and floating down a hallway,
Yeah.
that was nasty. And the bit in the operating room where the surgeon, anybody turning a scalpel on themselves is pretty messed up.
In Mausoleum, there's a recreation of that floating old woman where the aunt gets floated out over the big staircase drop, and something happens to her. She gets ripped open. Bobby Breezy, demonically possessed breasts. I love that movie.
I know we talk about Mausoleum a lot, Bill, but it's worth talking about.
I know. I had to go bring it up. I'm sorry.
No. I'm saying it's.
I want to.
You did it because you want to.
Look at Michael Ansara, Native American, like Armand Arsante in Prophecy and Victoria Racino. Neither one of them Native American.
No.
Well, almost every Native American in wrestling wasn't Native American either. Like Chief J Strongbow was Joe Scarpa, is his real name, an Italian. So, if you're Italian, there's a good chance you could be a Native American wrestler or actor. So it worked out. Mike Arcero is Arabic, Syrian American. So that let him really get whatever he wanted to be in. He was again ethically ambiguous, I should say. Ambitious. And he was Coach East on Broken Arrow, so that probably typecasted him. Because that was one of his first big roles. He's also Bill. You always say whenever I bring up somebody to my mom, I'm like Michael Ansara. She goes, "Oh, he didn't treat Barbara Eden well." I just want to know about his acting. I don't need to know. I don't need to know the Enquirer story.
Get personal about it.
Yeah, let's get personal. Yeah, but I'm excited to hear more about this film.
So this is a project that Jack Perez has coming out at some point in the near future, hopefully. Sinister Cinema is going to be selling it. Isn't that what you said?
Yeah, Sinister Cinema, and then is going to do the Blu-ray. It's I screened it recently for an audience up here in Portland. There's a one of the last great video stores is up here called Movie Madness. I don't know if you know about Movie Madness. It's a terrific video store, and they have an incredible collection of memorabilia, like stuff that was never in LA. Like just amazing props and wardrobe, just the greatest stuff. And what was my point? So I had a screening there just about a week ago, and yeah, no, it went really well. Everybody was really into it. I was very happy because most people had never even heard of sinister cinema, and it was real education for them to know that these movies, had been curated by this one guy for basically 4 decades, and that these movies exist. And somebody in the audience said, "It sounds like this piece is semi-autobiographical," was their comment, and I thought that was an interesting comment. And I guess it's autobiographical, I guess, in the sense that I don't know, I feel a certain kinship with low budget genre movies, mostly because that's the world I worked in professionally most of my life, and also the source of why I got into the movie business in the first place was the love of those movies. So it's all sort of woven together. And like I said earlier, I just feel like I have great empathy for filmmakers, particularly just in general, particularly those that are not recognized or remembered, anymore. I mean, I very seriously doubt if we weren't like pushing the Manitou or Grizzly, anybody would know or care about William Girdler. It just as one example.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to kind of point these people out in their films to people to say, hey, And I think most people get excited when they see. I mean, that's what I'm seeing. Is like when people see these things, they're like, wow, I want to investigate this. It's what we were talking about earlier about this idea of like exploring and discovering, and maybe that's uncommon, these days. That this feeling of discovery. And truthfully, what's really cool is in the process of doing the documentary, because there were so many titles, I still keep uncovering stuff that I haven't seen. As long as I've been wading through movies, and really the cutting was really the heavy lifting. It was really just going through these titles and trying to surgically remove sort of the best bits.
It was amazing. Your work on this piece is incredible. Just looking at all of the editing that you did for this, it had to have been a monumental undertaking.
It was. I appreciate that, Bill. And I for me, it was, like, how do I even begin to kind of like just go through these titles and find, what's worth presenting, and then find some cohesion in putting all this stuff together. But I mean, fortunately, it was. I kind of approached the interview with Greg, talking about how the catalog, in a way that the catalog is laid out, which is really by genre. So if you look at the catalog, there's definitely a horror section, a fantasy section, sci-fi, and then you get sword and sandal, and you get exploitation and crime thriller, and on and on and on and on. And so I was able to kind of like sort of drill down on genres and try to find the best representative films as I could. But like I said, like just the other day, I came across a title, and I was like, "Holy cow! You have this, and you have this in the arsenal too." And so it's weird. It's like, I think he's got more films than he even knows he has, in a way. What I do miss, though, is the actual tangible catalog. Because the catalog used to be, this, and he was hand paginating, and he was doing just like you were talking about the old days of just laying these things out. And then at a certain point, it just got too much for him, and he sort of poured it over to a website. And it's essential to have the website because you can find the stuff and order the stuff, but it doesn't have the same magic as the actual. And you can go on eBay now that people are selling old Sinister Cinema catalogs, like just to have the catalog.
I've got one somewhere.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just fundamentally it's just a love of movies, and specifically these types of movies that we've been talking about. That really is the sort of the core of the thing. So
I couldn't imagine anybody hunting down Hallmark films like this. Like, I have to see every Hallmark film that there is.
Yeah, well, somebody will. It's like funny, when I was first working in the business, I worked at a production company doing these behind the scenes documentaries, and they were also very big in the clip show network television show business, in the sense that they would do these retrospectives on classic series. So they did like Bob Newhart show and Mary Tyler Moore, but they also did Bonanza, and they did a show called Back to Bonanza. And in order to do these shows, these editors had to watch every frickin' episode of Bonanza. And that's not necessarily, I don't care how hardcore a fan, that's not anything, we were looking at these guys, like these poor guys, like they were, like it was some sort of weird psychological experiment. Like if you lock two guys in a room and make them watch every episode of Bonanza, what happens to you, So
now I want to know.
But this was actually a joy because, to explore the titles in the Sinister Cinema catalog is no great hardship. It's just like you're always uncovering something cool.
I just the 2 seconds I just looked at the site, I was like, oh yeah, there's like at least 4 movies I could be like, these are really important to me. So yeah,
Right.
like it's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm sure, like I said, I kind of just sort of, I've skimmed the surface, and I feel like, if there's interest and I can do more and talk to, like you guys and people in our community about the titles that they love, I think that's another way of just kind of keeping the catalog alive in this world, very specific world of genre movies, low budget genre movies alive. I think it's interesting that, like, for example, his customers are really like our age or even older, and that speaks to why he doesn't even do Blu-rays necessarily. That DVD is like the height of the technology, like that's he says, and in the documentary, as you saw it, like he has people who are still like, they're still watching exclusively the stuff on VHS. Like that's as far as they want to take it,
I talked about this story before on the show. Like there's a big used store here called The Exchange. It has like, tons of old media. And I was in the horror section and there was this guy that was about 80 and he said, oh, my wife died. He just started talking to me. He said, my wife died about a year ago and I decided to buy a DVD player. I never had one before. And he goes, I didn't know that all these movies my wife and I watched on show or theater, I can buy now. And I said, yeah. He goes, did they have any Barbara Steele movies? I'm like, oh my God, this guy's my best friend, new best friend. So I helped him like go through and find what Barbara, he goes, and he was like, Nightmare Castle. Oh, my wife and I love this movie. And I was like, man, first off, your wife was awesome. I never met her, but that's amazing. And he's like, so I found like 5 Barbara Steele movies for him. And he's
Right
like,
on.
I can watch these all the time. And I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. That like, he's very late to the DVD game, but you know what? Who cares?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he probably went home and enjoyed those. So it made me
Totally.
super happy. Yeah.
That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for me, it was just like, I feel like the Sinister Cinema thing was really just a personal project that, and just as a filmmaker, I feel like just the way I've been formed is that I have to do a personal project, something more personal to kind of keep me going. I mean, I love any opportunity to make anything, but like the movies that I look back on that I really care about tend to be the ones that are more personal, and so this was an opportunity just to do something, something personal, which is not unlike what you guys are doing right now. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just like it just dove into something that I loved, and just did
That
it
must
for
be an interesting thing as a creative to engage with somebody else's material and somehow make it your own. That's interesting. Every film, almost every film anyway, is a collaboration. And it's but it's an important thing for a director to be able to do that, to find an end to whatever they're making this movie about.
Oh,
You can kind of
totally.
tell when they don't.
Yeah. And again, it's like, I by no means am representing the totality of anything. I'm putting forward, like as you said, Bill, I'm like basically the stuff I'm responding to is the stuff I'm putting forward, and somebody else might, say, no, you missed this one. This is definitely worth investigating. I think that's definitely true when you're sort of presenting your interpretation of a big subject. So I really try to do is just try to, and I let Greg, in many ways, Greg Luce, the founder, just kind of lead the way and have him tell me, like these are the ones that in my own collection, these are the ones that sort of, speak to me. And in a way that was sort of the way in to the, I could see the key ones to sort of show, but I'm sure there are plenty of titles that deserve representation that aren't in this cut, that we could probably, do later. That's exciting. I mean, I really do think it goes back to
One of the
when you
most
get to a
amazing.
certain age. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. You can finish your thought.
Oh no. I don't even know what I was saying. I think now I totally forgot.
I was
Go ahead.
surprised in the documentary when I watched the documentary where he talked about going to other cities to watch things that were on TV.
Right.
and it's something I could totally relate to, because that was one of the key elements of my week as a child, was when the new TV guide came out, and then I could look and see what was playing,
Right.
and plan my TV watching for the week. So the idea of branching out and going into another city where they, like, renting a hotel room just to
I know
watch
it's crazy,
TV,
right?
it's
That.
just
Yeah,
staggering.
yeah, it is. It really does speak to that sort of like that enthusiasm, which we do understand. By the way, speaking of that, a lot of people are fans of Fade to Black, and I'm an actually big fan of the novelization of Fade to Black. I don't know if you've ever read that, but I actually think it's in many ways, a richer story. The way the story is told, and the whole opening of the book, the tie-in or the novelization of Fade to Black, is exactly his step-by-step procedure of pouring through the TV guide and organizing his calendar and what he's going to watch and what he's going to tape and why. And
Yes.
you really get into that, the minutia and the importance of like building a calendar. And I've got to be home in time to tape that, and or he's going to have his, whatever, his aunt make sure that she sets the timer so that this gets recorded. And it's just it really does speak to that very specific time period where you were trying to catch this stuff, as it came out, as opposed to, today where
Yeah,
you
you
find
had
anything.
to.
Yeah.
This was before VHS, before you
Yeah.
could record anything, and you had to be home. You had to be in front of your television when this screened, and otherwise you were going to have to wait another year at least, probably a couple of years, before they would ever show it again, if they ever did.
Yeah. It was like the
So there
radio.
was a real,
Yeah. It was like
it
a
was
song on the
scary
radio.
almost.
Yeah. It was like your song comes on and you never know when it's going to come on again. And,
No adult in my life could relate to this, and eventually they caught on to the fact that I was trying to manipulate the television for the week, and I'm like, they didn't understand how important that was for us to see this
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
like, oh, it's just some stupid movie he wants to watch.
Right. Right.
Meanwhile, like the Greg Luces of the world were going to other cities to record them
That's right.
on video.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's why the whole, ownership or tangibility of owning of a film, on VHS, actually holding that thing in your hand, meant so much, because it was this, it was this thing that, it was this intangible that you couldn't have, but now suddenly you could have it and possess it was almost unimaginable,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting now that that has come back around, that there is this sort of, renewed, reverence for the actual, tangible, physical media thing, which
I
is great.
remember too being able to seeing those Super 8 reels at
Yes,
Kmart. There was like a display of movies.
that's
I'm
right.
like,
They
I
were
can
usually on.
take this movie home and own it.
Yes,
Oh
yes,
my
yes, yeah.
God.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. And he speaks to that in the doc, right? So it's like, yeah, all those things about, and it was like incremental, right? It was like, before that it was soundtracks. You get a soundtrack
Yes.
and listen to the soundtrack, and and I vividly remember, like, with an audio cassette recorder, taping movies, just putting it in front of the
Yes.
speaker, just so you could, relive it, whether it's through the soundtrack, whether it's through an audio recording of the thing, staring at the, at the artwork. You were trying to just relive and own that moment again. And it was only until, VHS, this thing was this, right before that, again, these Super 8 cut downs, where it was just like, it was bits of it, it graduated to this, like, suddenly you can be in a box and you'll have it. And I don't think people can really, kids, I don't know if they can appreciate that, because it's like, it's always been, you're born into it. That's the way it was.
They're not going to have the weight that we did, even from, like, it always seemed like, oh, well, I'm sure your parents did that. Well, we'll watch that when it comes on cable, or you can watch that when it comes out to rent. And it's like, that window is 2 weeks now, if that, do you know what I mean? And that's so crazy to me today.
Yeah.
That, like, you can just get stuff so quickly now.
Yeah. And again, I don't think it has the same, it doesn't have the same specialness necessarily, if it's that readily available and it's that easy to get, then I'm not saying you should make things hard to get, but it's funny how things that are hard to get somehow become, special in your mind. It's just like, okay, this rare thing, it's a rare thing, it's a rare thing. So it has value. Vince wrote, I have a cassette taping of the opening theme. Yeah. The Bernard Herrmann 7 Fortunes of Sinbad. That's awesome. Taped over a drive-in speaker. Yeah. That's exactly the mindset,
Somewhere on YouTube, there's a clip that somebody posted of they took a cassette recorder into a screening of Halloween in 1979, and they wanted to record the music, but what they got was the audience screaming at a couple of the big shock moments,
cool.
and it's on there like with the actual film image, and it's scored at exactly the same time as the screams happen in the theater. It's amazing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
only
yeah.
maybe like 3 minutes, and I wish it was the whole 90 minutes. It's just
That's
so
awesome. Yeah.
I can remember doing that when it was on NBC the first time in 1981, and I was at home with a babysitter, and we watched Halloween, and I recorded it, and I would whenever I knew it was going to be scary, I would try and scare her so she would scream for the recording.
That's awesome.
For years, that was what I listened to over and over again, was just that TV recording of Halloween.
Right.
Jack Perez, director of the upcoming The Sinister Cinema Story and so many other strange tales. It's been so exciting having you on the program tonight.
That's my pleasure.
Are you gonna go all the way to the third segment?
I can't. I actually have family in town, so I promised to participate. It's 10 o'clock here, so I have to do my familial duties. But I would definitely please have me back if I'm not imposing. I'd love.
We'd love to have you back.
I'd love to come back some other time. And I hope everybody enjoys both movies. Enjoyed Grizzly, and definitely the Manitou is something special. So, thank you so much for having me for this. I loved it.
Thanks for doing
you.
it.
And
it's been a lot of fun.
Right on. Well, you guys have a great rest of the show, and I'll see you in the future, hopefully.
Awesome.
We hope everybody will come back after the Manitou. The link is on Groovy Doom. Go watch it. Come back afterwards for the third segment, and we'll have lots more to talk about. Until then, witchy Manitou, or whatever they say in this film. Bye-bye.
See you.